The protagonist tore off pieces of fried meat with his sharp teeth. He sat on a monster in the middle of the forest, looking at the sunset in front of him. He said that, as expected, the roasted thunder dragon meat was the best. He prepared a great souvenir for the villagers. Black wings and a long tail came out from his waist. The bird flew calmly over the forest, in the middle of which special devices were installed to form a magic circle. Suddenly, in the middle of it, there was a cart pulled by a donkey. In June of the year 1013, according to the sacred calendar, the village of Joln, a stronghold of agriculture in the western lands of the kingdom of Yura, lived its usual life. The inhabitants worked, the children played happily, the guards knew no worries, yawning loudly. The guard said he was very hungry. He was sitting on a barrel at the entrance to the village. Suddenly he saw a cart approaching. Sitting on it, smiling, Kakyuu greeted him cheerfully and asked how he was doing. The man replied that he was full of energy even at night. The boy laughed and replied that he had made him imagine it. Handing him the money, Kakyuu said that it was the entrance fee, but the man said that he didn't need it, because he was already like one of the villagers. But the guy was persistent, saying that rules are rules. It's like a promise to himself, and he always fulfills them to the end. A little later, pieces of delicious meat were cooked on the grill. When it was ready, the residents began to eat it with incredible pleasure. One of the men said it was just delicious. The main character, holding various food in his hands, said that today he was treating and they could eat only as much as they wanted. People were impressed by how generous he was. One of the men asked if he was sure he wanted to give them that much meat. It looked very good, and there was a lot of it, so he wondered what animal it came from. Kakyuu replied that it was thunder dragon meat. People were shocked by this. They told him to stop lying, because he would never be able to defeat the legendary dragon. But the guy insisted that he was lying, and hunted it himself. Alma took his hand, and confidently said that he had never lied to anyone. Holding his head, the protagonist replied that she was his only ally. The man said that her father would never give his approval, so the girl should look at him. All swindlers have the same slanted eyes as their stupid hairdo. Kakyuu was irritated by these words. Juice suggested that they think about it. Because he had a lot of money, he could even afford such meat. He was simply an excellent candidate. Arno wanted to object to her, but he was driven into a corner. The men in the tavern laughed at him. The guard, blushing, shouted that he also blessed this union and the boy could take his great-granddaughter. They accepted it by a majority vote, and only Arno was forgiven. Watching them, the boy laughed. People continued to chat merrily in the tavern, and the girls brought food and drinks. Everyone was happy with the treats. Meanwhile, the moon rose outside. Arno asked Kakyuu if he was going to stay the night. While wiping the table, the boy replied that if he didn't mind, he would be grateful. Alma was happy about that. Suddenly, Juiz cried out, clutching the wall. Arno asked her if she was okay, since she was pregnant and needed to rest. Kakyuu asked how the baby was feeling. The girl replied that he was too energetic, all thanks to the meat he was bringing. Alma, with shining eyes, asked when he would be born. She was told that in about a month. The guy thought that as soon as he finished all the business with the trade, he would definitely visit again. The girl agreed with him with a smile, adding that she was sure that the child would be glad to see him too. Entering the room, the main character collapsed on the bed from fatigue. Looking at the ceiling, he realized that it was some kind of miracle that he could live such an ordinary life. Having long ago cut short his earthly path in Japan for numerous sins committed during his life, he was cast down to hell and somehow miraculously reincarnated as a demon. Since then, his life has been one continuous torment. Hell is full of demons and monsters. He was constantly at risk of being destroyed by more powerful demons. Because of this, he found himself in various situations. Because of the petty quarrels between the god of hell and the god of heaven, wars constantly rage between heaven and hell, and he always finds himself on the brink of death. There was no talk of peace. And yet, for 2,000 long years, he struggled to survive, and somehow he managed to gain the wisdom and strength needed to survive in hell. One day, the supreme gods of hell and heaven met, ready to deal with each other. The main character was next to them, because he did not have time to run away. At the moment their forces met, a powerful explosion occurred, destroying everything in its path. Buildings literally crumbled into pieces. The guy realized that this time it was finally over. He tried, but the years of torment were gone. But he woke up in another world, which was alien to their land. It took time to comprehend the situation, but, having taken the form of a man, he traveled around the world exploring it. 3 years ago, he found this village and, pretending to be a wanderer who had lost his memory, studied the language and culture. Now he is a traveling merchant. Frankly, he feels like he's been too lucky. Everything is so good that sometimes he feels like he's still asleep. He smiled, rejoicing, because 2,000 years is an eternity. He literally knew all the circles of hell. The fact that now he does not shake with fear every day and can eat normally and sleep in a bed, is this not a great success? Moreover, thanks to this time in another world, he became very strong. It's something like the old novels he once read about characters who were too cool. It's just a bonus level in his demonic life. Rising up on the bed, he said that finally his dream of a quiet life would come true. He could not miss the opportunity to have fun. Laughing, he asks the God of Heaven what he will say to this. Alma looked at him in surprise. Noticing her, he cleared his throat and asked why she had come to him. The girl replied that her mother had asked her to bring him some water. The main character thanked her because he was just thirsty. After that, the embarrassed girl handed him something, and he realized that they were gloves. He immediately tried them on, and the girl explained that she had done it herself. Her father had advised her to do so. She added that they say that traders get calluses on their palms from constantly pulling on their horse's reins, and he doesn't seem to wear gloves. The guy replied that they would suit him just fine. They were nice to the touch and bright red. It must have been hard to make them, so she did a good job. The girl was happy with his words. He added with a smile that he would treasure them, thanking her. With her nose in the air, the girl added that she would spare nothing for her future husband. Because of this, she became even more embarrassed, and, going out the door, said that she would not disturb him while he was resting. The protagonist thanked her again. Looking at the gloves, he apologized. Because he was a demon, he couldn't have calluses on his hands, and he couldn't marry her. The happy girl was jumping along the corridor at that time, and he wondered what it would be like to have a family. Lying on his bed, he thought about how eternity was his only legacy. He didn't know what counting years was, and for him, a demon, time was an endless river. As the sun rose on the horizon, the protagonist and Alma were having breakfast. At that time, Arno came and suggested that Kakyuu go fishing after breakfast. As they sat by the river, the man noticed that Alma had given him the gloves after all. The boy replied that she had done a great job. Arno said that was great, and that he would like some too. But after that, he added that even though his daughter had said something about marriage, it would never happen. The guy didn't understand what he was talking about, because he didn't have any such hobbies. Arno was indignant. He thought that the guy did not find the girl attractive. Kakyuu replied that he did not want to become his son-in-law, so he should calm down. On this issue, they were in solidarity. Kakyuu didn't understand what good Alma could find in someone like him. Arno replied that he had saved her life, but that wasn't the best reason to marry her. He then sighed, which puzzled the boy. The man said that Alma had been frail since birth. They said she wouldn't live to be 10. Hadn't he noticed how she always tried to look cheerful in public? But at home she spent almost all her time in bed. But it had been about a year and a half since he had returned from his first trading trip. She had begun to eat meat and spices, and they had sustained her. Arno remembered the first time Kakyuu had set foot on their land. He hadn't known what to expect from him then, but now he was grateful to him. And not only he, but the entire village, the inhabitants who were preparing sheep's wool at that time. The guy thought about being thanked. His face was filled with different emotions from these words. Arno wanted to add something else, and the guy realized that they were getting to the heart of the matter. The man caught a fish on his hook at that moment, and said that the order had come from the capital. He was being taken into the army. The protagonist was interested in why this had suddenly happened. The man replied that he had always been a reserve. Demons had been active in the Urals lately. He's a merchant, hasn't he heard about it? The guy thought he usually traveled through the portal, so he didn't notice. Arno added that if something happened to him, he wanted to ask him to look after Ars and Alma. Kakyuu understood that he meant the unborn child. The guy asked if the man understood that it was a male name and the gender was still unknown. He confidently said that this time it would definitely be a boy, because he felt it. The protagonist agreed with him. Kakyuu was hesitant about entrusting them to him. The man said it was just in case. His father had been eaten by demons. You never knew what might happen. The boy asked if he was sure he wanted this. Arno looked at him and said he wanted him to look after them. The guy said he wasn't making any promises. They continued fishing. Later, the protagonist prepared his cart. He received only 30,000 reals. He was thanked for the food he provided. Alma asked him when he would be back next time. The guy replied that he would probably come to see her brother at the end of the next month. He also called her over and put jewelry around her neck. The girl looked at the glowing stone with delight. He said that it was a necklace of dragon scales as a token of gratitude for the gloves. He asked her to take care of herself. After that, he left, and the villagers thanked him and smiled cheerfully. Sometime later, he arrived in another city, which had a large number of people. He was shopping and eating different foods. When he left, he began to look around. In July, he arrived in the city of Viperna, the capital of the Dragon Kingdom of Gizaria. He was given a certificate for promotion to a mid-level merchant and a promissory note. Now he has more opportunities. The girl at the counter congratulated him, for which he thanked her. Later, he arrived at a clothing store where he was offered the dark fabric clothes he had requested. The guy was quite determined to take them. They cost 1 gold coin. The woman was surprised that he was already of average level because she thought that he was still younger. The guy laughed and said that he would have fun when he returned to the village. She asked him if he had come from the Urals. She asked him to be careful. The Holy Knights were currently on an expedition there. He asked her again about it. She replied that it was said that the Holy Knights, blessed by the goddess, could sense the presence of demons. Every few years, they were allowed to conduct a special expedition to neighboring countries to exterminate all demons. But this is just rumor, taking advantage of the fact that people are unable to sense the presence of demons. The Holy Knights slander the villages, accusing them of witchcraft, and under this pretext carry out robberies. So she asks him to be careful when he returns. But at that moment, he had already left the premises. Going outside, the protagonist used the mana summoning to track the tracks. He thought that using teleportation magic in the middle of the city was not very good. He would not like to do this, but he has no choice. He has a very unpleasant premonition. After a while, he found himself in the previously designated place. He ran through the grass, quickly approaching his village. From a distance, he could see that it was engulfed in flames, and black plumes of smoke were rising above it. His face showed horror. He slowly moved towards the village, thinking about what not. In panic, he sighed heavily. As he ran, he thought that he needed to calm down. Maybe it wasn't that bad. The smoke could be from cooking. They often burn grass in these parts, although it was clearly not the season. If it was a fire, he could handle it. Suddenly, he heard someone's voice. He imagined people he knew running towards him. However, what he saw was different from what he thought. The entire village was ablaze, and the villagers were lying on the ground. The protagonist walked past people lying on the ground. A bright flame blazed around him. When he reached the place, his face was distorted with pain. He started screaming loudly because he saw the people he had spent so much time with earlier. They were already gone by that time. At that moment, heavy rain began to fall. Looking at Alma, the protagonist reasoned about what had happened and who had done it. Using the devil's eye, he watched the souls so that they would explain to him what had happened. She saw the villagers gathered together and asking the Holy Knights to stop, as they knew nothing about demons. They answered that they should not lie. There was a clear demonic presence in this village. And also dragon meat was found in this village. Without the magical abilities inherent to demons, it is impossible to destroy a dragon. If they are innocent, they must say where they got this meat. Arno could not answer, which made the man realize that he was clearly covering for someone. He declared that they were demon minions and needed to be destroyed. The stunned boy realized that they were protecting him. Remembering the past, he realized that he had failed to save anyone again. He did not understand why it happened to them. His face darkened with anger. He thought that they were mocking him. He used the devil's eye of the soul seeker and saw hoofprints. With their help, he was able to see the road along which the Holy Knights went further and found the place where they were. A clear image of many horsemen moving away from the village appeared before him. He began to concentrate his magic. It rose so high into the sky that people from all over the world were able to see it, trying to figure out what it was. At this time, one of the knights began to call out to the commander, who shouted at him to leave him alone, but the knight insisted. He then looked up and saw a powerful attack shining above them. The Holy Knights began to stop their horses, looking up. At this time, the protagonist stood in the middle of a destroyed village. and in the distance an explosion blazed. For 2 millennia he wandered through the bottomless abyss of hell, where every moment was saturated with the pain of loss. There is no place for hope here, only darkness, hunger, and thirst for the end. He became a shadow of himself, a monster devoid of all humanity. By defiling souls and devouring them, he transformed himself into a creature worthy only of hell, and this village became the first victim of his fall. He was going to use them to get information, and if they interfered, he would destroy them. However, the way they treated him, the way he spent time with them, changed his mind. And it felt so good for him to laugh without mocking, to enjoy delicious food, to feel the warmth of someone's hands. He was experiencing all this for the first time in 2,000 years. It was priceless. And they, the gods of hell, want to take even that away from him. Then he won't need anything else. Why get anything if he's going to lose it anyway? A devilish form loomed over him, telling him that everything was broken. He tried to resist it, but it told him to remember what he was. After that, they began to merge, and the boy began to laugh. He completely transformed into his black devil form and began to roar loudly. His scream caused black energy to form above him. Suddenly he had a vision of Alma trying to stop him. He said that he understood that he was wrong, she could no longer stop this process, that was its true nature. He asked the girl if he had disappointed her. She shook her head in response. He sat down in front of her, apologized, and said that he had nothing left now. They were his only family, and tears came to his eyes. But the girl only hugged him in response, asking him to listen. She asked if he could hear it. A child's cry was heard next to him. Crouching down, he looked closely at the real box in front of him, and his devilish form began to dissipate. He extended his trembling hands towards the chest. When he opened it, he saw a small, crying child inside. On it was the necklace he had given to Alma. He wondered when he was born. Had it really been a month already? He remembered how he had discussed a boy's name with a man earlier. He picked up the child and held him tightly. Tears were streaming down his face. He called the child by his name. This will be his unbreakable oath. The demon Kakyuu will make Ars his son and raise him to be the happiest man in the world, he swears on his soul. After these words, his soul was wrapped in fetters. Holding the child in front of him, he thought that he had failed to make a promise to Arno that time, but this time he would promise. He told Ars not to worry. From now on, his life would be full of happy moments, because the devil's promise is unbreakable. At that moment, the sun rose. In the depths of hell, the gods laughed at him. They did not understand what kind of devil would sign a contract, putting his soul as payment. And all the while, they were calmly playing chess. The god of heaven said that it was probably some lowly one, like Kakyuu. The devil agreed with him, and added that it was because of him that he was able to go to that world. He replied that he had hoped for him. The devil said that he was the only one of his kind, a lower demon who had never lost his life in 2,000 years and had achieved power comparable to that of the higher demons. God said that he knew, but if this lower demon dared to harm another world, he would burn the hellish land to the ground and destroy all its servants. The demon only laughed, thinking it was sarcasm, because he was already destroyed. They'll still see how he picked up a human baby. The god of paradise looked at the main character and thought about the irony of fate, because in the future, this child will destroy Kakyuu. The protagonist at this time placed the child behind him, walking away from the graves of the villagers. This was the road along which the demon and the human child walk. In the magical world, in the royal residence, the ruler asked if all this was true. The man kneeling before him confirmed his words. He added that his subordinate, having followed the actions of the Order of the Holy Knights, personally witnessed it, so there was no doubt. Demon King Zel, Melkinos Lucifer, said that it is possible that there is someone who is equal to him in strength, and perhaps even superior. People around began to whisper that this could not be. They were asked to calm down, because they were at the court of His Majesty, the ruler of the earth. Teokia said that by order of the Insect Lord, a research team had been formed and had already been sent to the scene. One of the 4 great demons jumped to conclusions. All the demons under his control were ordered not to interfere in this matter. The man obeyed the order. Hades told his father that he was a coward. Maybe he should go there himself and check. The woman ordered him to stop talking. In public, you need to speak differently. Zell thought that they were probably hiding in such a way that their presence would not even be noticed, and once the deed was done, they would erase all traces of this incident. If they were attacking the Holy Knights, then they were clearly not their enemies. For now, they could only observe the situation. He laughed and said that eventually they would fall into his hands. In the world of people, on the land of the Holy Church of Caramiel, people joyfully greeted His Holiness the Pope. They noticed that the Holy Virgin was very beautiful. She carried a small child in her arms. Someone said that when he heard about the events in the Urals, he was very scared, but the princess was blessed by the goddess. If the legends are true, the Holy Maiden will definitely find her hero. Jid Kruger, the commander of the Knights Order, said that the birth of an heir will bless the people. This is great news. The 58th Pope, Arlias de Caramiel, agreed with him and added that she had given him hope in the form of the Holy Virgin, as a priest who defended humanity, as a head of state, and most importantly, as a father. He felt that a little weight had been lifted from his shoulders, but the aristocracy doesn't seem to be thrilled. Kid says he thinks even they will realize now that it's not time to engage in political squabbles, since the birth of a Holy Virgin means danger is coming to the world of men. The girl agreed with him. She said that he should not worry. She was sure that this girl would bring them the true hero. He agreed with her and suggested praying for the goddess's blessing to be with her. This world is inhabited by gods, including the goddess of creation and angels. The world is divided into 3 levels: heaven, the human world, and hell, connected by a world tree. Below live powerful demons and evil creatures, ruled by the Demon King. The main character was sitting among the goats licking him at the time. It had been a month and a half since he had taken the boy. In order to get milk, he had to milk the mountain goats brought from the village in the mornings. But ours was fine. He had already started crawling. Entering the house, Kakyuu screamed that he was running away again. This child is restless. He is only 2 months old, and he is already so active. Suddenly, he screamed, and the protagonist realized that he was hungry. In a month and a half of fatherhood, he had already filled his hand with milk preparation. First, you need to boil the water, and after the water bath, cool the food to a warm state. He gave the boy a bottle that he didn't like. The boy wondered if it was really that bad, but that's okay. The taste of goat's milk can change a little from day to day. Apparently the kid was just a gourmet. But he had another dish. He decided to add some berry jam and some sugar to the bottle to make it even tastier. He handed it to the boy, deciding to try it again. But Ars spat it out again with a dissatisfied face. The protagonist was saddened at first, but then decided that he couldn't give up. Since he was dirty, he needed to change his clothes, so he asked him not to fidget. The sweaty boy thought that he had no idea that raising a child would be so difficult. He didn't underestimate it, but he, who had spent thousands of years in hell fighting and mastering thousands of spells, was sincerely confident that he could handle it much more gracefully. But the reality is that he doesn't know a single spell to wash diapers, so he does his own. And there is no spell to make him laugh. And he certainly doesn't know a spell to stop him from crying at night. So mothers are the real heroines. When Ars finally fell asleep, the boy was very happy about it. Sometimes raising a child seems so hard that he remembers hell, but as soon as he looked at that real face, all his strength returned to him. Juice and Arno probably felt the same way. Thinking that he wanted to show them this, he fell asleep. Opening his eyes abruptly, he thought that now was not the time to sleep. When the boy fell asleep, it was time for household chores. And he needed to have time to wash, chop wood, and take care of the animals. He did all this as quickly as possible. He also needed to work in the garden. He stood with a hoe in the field and watched the crows flying past. They had already moved from the place where they had been before. They moved from the Ural Kingdom to the southern continent to the country of Elbrant across the sea. Their new home is in the forest in the central part of this country. The reason for the move was the same, that he destroyed all this in front of the kings and the church could start hunting for him, although he does not think that they will be able to reveal his true nature. But still, just in case, they left there. His home was carved into the rock. It once served as a watchtower on the road, but now that no one is there, it is forgotten. The house fits in well with the surrounding nature. It has a beautiful view of the tropical forest. The guy completely furnished it, creating a well with magic, and he brought the interior with him. He redid everything inside with magic. This is one of the shelters he found and occupied during his travels, before settling in the village. Although the forest was quite dense, he still reinforced the camouflage magic curtain just in case, because there might be someone as perceptive as those holy knights. The house was old, of course, but in hell, the houses he built usually fell into ruin the next day. Maybe he would gradually expand it and build on it, and eventually he would have a castle. Well, then it wouldn't be a shelter, but a fortress. This is his home, which he dreamed of for 2,000 years, so he needs to take care of it. Suddenly, there was an explosion, causing fragments of the building to fly. This shocked the guy. Kakyuu ran into the house and, after clearing his throat, he asked the boy if he was okay. The boy was sitting happily and smiling among the rubble. He picked him up and realized that he was unharmed. He saw that there was a big hole in the ceiling, and he couldn't understand who could have done it and where it came from in such weather. He didn't understand what was going on. While he was thinking about this, the boy sneezed loudly, causing flames to fly out of his mouth and envelop the protagonist. After putting it down, Kakyuu realized that the boy had magical abilities since birth. He was beginning to wonder why this was considered a normal occurrence in this world, since almost no one in the village knew how to use magic. And then the only explanation came to him: dragon meat. He treated all the villagers to it. For about 1.5 years, he regularly brought it to them. The only child born with abilities during this period was ours. If we assume that the magical energy from the eaten dragon somehow affected the fetus at an early stage of development, then it turns out that it was born in a human body, but at the same time possesses the magical energy of a dragon. So it's all his fault. Maybe that's why he's growing up so fast. He's put an unbearable burden on him. It's unlikely he'll be able to live a normal life in human society. After receiving another attack from the child, the boy realized that he still needed someone other than him. So he decided to create a magical creature. He placed a magic circle on the floor, in the center of which lay the ingredients. Soon creatures began to appear from there. He calls them his mini-version, and can control them at will. In hell, where there was no place for fine work, they were useless, but they will cope with household chores. Life will become a little easier. After that, he started teaching them how to run a household and take care of a child. Not everything worked out. It seemed like they needed more training. Oh well, he himself had originally planned to raise him alone. Compared to the hell of constant fighting, natural disasters and chaos, raising one child is a walk in the park. With crazy eyes, he told the child to look at his father. He will do everything to raise him to be the best person. Well, at the same time, monsters were hiding in the bushes nearby. After 2 weeks, the main character is completely tired of the baby's crying. Day and night, every 2 hours, feeding, changing, night awakenings, running away. He only manages to calm the child down long enough to do housework, the garden, and the animals. He has to constantly patch up the house with magic. There is no time for work or hunting, and food supplies are running low. When he coughs, explosions occur. When he laughs, hurricanes. When he pees, a powerful stream of water appears. If he cries, a thunderstorm. It's strange. Even though he's not in hell, he wants to sleep for at least an hour. He told himself not to be sad, thinking about the child. Well, fatigue finally killed him. When he was sleeping, he remembered talking to his father. He asked him to listen to him. But his father answered him that it was his job, and he had no choice. The boy said he liked the school and would stay. His father wanted to know who would pay, to which he replied that he would earn it himself. The man said that he needed to study now, not work. He wasn't just going on business trips, it was for his future. The guy asked him not to decide everything himself. Running away in tears, he said he didn't need it. Running into another room, the boy slammed the door and looked at the photos of his family. He missed his mother, who had passed away. After that, he woke up rubbing his eyes, just as goblins were attacking him from above. He noticed them right away. He destroyed the attackers with one movement, thinking about how long he had slept. Looking back at the crib, he saw that there was no child there and began to call him. In his panic, he hoped that the child would not be kidnapped. He quickly ran out into the street and used the devil's eye specifically to use soul observation to find traces of the child. He quickly ran in the direction of the tracks. He was so exhausted that he did not even notice that the goblins had entered the house. He even put up a protective circle, so he does not understand what he is doing. He doesn't understand what kind of father he is. How he can raise one child, he asks only one thing, that the boy be okay. Jumping out of the bushes, he called the child. He saw that a girl was holding the child with one hand, and squeezing the goblin's throat with the other. The girl looked at him cautiously, and Ars looked over her shoulder. The guy looked at the picture in front of him in surprise. He did not understand who they were and why they were talking about this backwater. The man who was with the elf spoke an incomprehensible language. At that time, the boy called the guy. Kakyuu said that he did not quite understand what they were telling him. He added that this was his son and thanked them for saving him. The man replied that he did not know that he was a foreigner. He added that they were rushing to the holy city and saw goblins dragging the baby. He was very glad that they managed to find his father right away. He told her to give the child to his father. The guy stretched out his hands to the boy, apologizing for the fact that he was probably scared. However, the girl did not give it to him, hugging him tighter. She asked if he was really the father of this child and asked if he knew where they were now. The guy didn't know what to answer her. She added that this was the Great Borkley Forest. Fire dragons lived there, and people avoided the place, thinking it was an uninhabited wild forest. Far from busy roads, along an old path, there is one lightly dressed foreigner with a child in his arms. This looks more like a child abduction. So she asked him again if he was really the father of this child. He tried not to think about it, if he was really fit to be his father. He doesn't know exactly, but he can say one thing with certainty. He told the girl that he can't tell the details, but for him, this child is the most precious son in the whole world. Hearing his words, the girl apologized and gave him the child. She was impolite in asking such questions. Therefore, she asks him not to be angry with his son's benefactors. He replied that, of course, her mistrust was quite understandable. After that, he thanked her. The girl pressed her hands and said that people like her did not need to be thanked. And then she climbed back into the runner, and they left. In fact, the protagonist guessed, but tried to hide it, until she asked him. Ars has no one but him. He can't live a normal life. He thought he could raise him alone, for his own good. But he was wrong. It was for his own good. He was afraid that the more people appeared near him, the greater the horror of their loss. So he wanted to leave the boy near him, alone, but is that how a father should behave? Depriving him of the opportunity to find friends, love, dreams. That way he will only become the same father to Ars that he had. Even if there are more dear people, he will never allow himself to lose them. He must be ready to protect them at any cost. To be a real father to the boy, to fulfill the promise he made that day. Holding the child close, he asked him what he thought about it. He remembered the smiling faces of his parents and sister and imagined the boy reaching out to them. He decided that Ars was right. Lifting him into the air, he said that he would try his best. They would find those people who would become their family. In the federal kingdom of Elfland, in the southeastern part of the Great Forest, the ravine of the Heavenly Waterfall, someone was happy that they finally managed to steal the dragon egg. It was simply unbelievable, but he was told not to get cocky. They would be happy when they returned. Okay, they were already far enough away, but was he pursuing them? He was told not to worry, because they had cast a barrier that hid magic and aura. For the ritual of immersing the egg into the waterfall, 8 humans and 4 S-class magical monkeys were sacrificed. Nothing, not even a fire dragon, could withstand such power. They compensate for these losses with the stolen egg. They were asked not to forget that they were dividing the spoils in a 3-to-1 ratio. The man replied that he would conduct all negotiations himself. Suddenly, the earth shook. They didn't understand what was happening, but they realized that he needed to hide quickly. Peeking out from their hiding place, they saw that the fire dragon had evaporated the waterfall. He sat under the drops of water, growling menacingly. Suddenly, he rose into the air, and they thought he was flying straight towards them, but he was heading west. They realized it was all thanks to the barrier. They were very lucky, so they wondered where he could have gone. If he came across a city on the way, it would be the end of him. But they didn't care about that, although it was the most disastrous. The main character arrived in the city and stood among a large number of people. Being among them, he was very nervous. It is a port city on a large river, the closest settlement to the forest refuge, about 80 kilometers to the north as the crow flies. Situated close to a trade route that crosses the country, with a leisurely river that is easy to sail upstream, where foreign traders converse in many languages. At the same time, the forest on the opposite bank of the river is the domain of the fire dragon. Therefore, people without business are not recommended to approach it. Due to such geographical conditions, This place is a hotbed of shadow trade. In that case, why were they in such a place with the boy? He needed someone to look after him. The thing is, after the recent kidnapping incident, he decided to give up the idea of raising a child alone and find a wife who will help him. This is a real mating hunt. In order to free up time and resources, he needs to temporarily hand over some of the care for the log to someone else, because there are no kindergartens here. But it wasn't for him why everyone was looking at them like that, because a man with a child was such a rare thing. The men said they were easy prey for them, well-dressed and with a child. He understood why it was happening. He hid around the corner, he was able to hide from them. It turns out that going somewhere with a child is much more difficult than he thought. As expected, he couldn't find anyone suitable for this video. As a rule, the people proposed had been deprived of their rights for committing crimes. Among them, you can choose the one to whom you can trust the child, and who will cope with his uncontrolled magic. A person with enough strength and ability, but such people are not so easy to find. While thinking about what kind of person would take care of the child, the image of the girl who had saved him earlier disappeared from his mind. He didn't understand what he was doing, because he had missed an incredibly talented person. He would never meet such geniuses again. So he tried to support him, and he realized what was done was done. He needed to get his act together. He heard a man say that if such a big client had arrived, there would have been more noise. Another man replied that he had definitely heard the trading company talking about it. They say that Sabas the Seer is in town now. Since he came incognito on purpose, it means that some big deal is being prepared. This is a chance for business. Hearing the name, the protagonist was surprised. Louis Sebastian is the head of a powerful trading company that deals in everything. In one generation, he rose from the bottom to become one of the most influential merchants on the continent and supplier to the royal family. Even Kakyuu, a small merchant, knows about him. Although he is not sure if it is true, it is good news. A merchant like him can surely help him find the right person. So he decided that their goal for today was to find him and establish contact with him. In an abandoned building on the opposite bank of the river, the girl was sitting by a ruined wall. She thought about why she could believe his words then. After all, she thought that she would never be able to trust anyone again. At that moment, a man came and told Elsa that the ship was ready. The girl turned her attention to him and started to rise from her seat. She addressed him as Mr. Sebas. The man smiled softly at her. At this time, the protagonist was trying to escape from the merchants who were chasing him. They were shouting that he had burned down their shop. He wanted to apologize to them for his child sneezing fire. He finally ran into a dead end. The men were ordering him to surrender, and they would hand him over to the police. The people around him turned their attention to them. The guy raised his hands in a trying gesture, offering to negotiate. He would compensate them for everything. The man shouted that only a fool would believe his words. Judging by his face, he was the spitting image of a swindler. The guy thought that he hadn't heard his address like that for a long time. There are too many people around, so he can't jump or teleport. Suddenly, one of them asks him in confusion what he's doing in the city. Everyone starts shouting that they need to escape to the ship. The boy looked up and was surprised by the picture that appeared before him. Right above him in the sky was a dragon, which opened its mouth wide. The protagonist saw with fear that the dragon opened its mouth, preparing to strike. Its fire set everything around ablaze. After stopping his attack, the protagonist told him to take it easy, because he was not ready to bear responsibility if the boy got hurt. He could not understand where the dragon came from. Although he saved them, now they can leave. They stood together with the child in the middle of the fire, and the protagonist remembered when he came to the village. Panic was reflected on his face and the child's face. He wondered if he should run away. Meanwhile, the people on the ships watched the dragon fly and spread its flames. Sebas then realized that it was a fire dragon and decided that it was dangerous. He ordered everyone to turn the ships around, because they were returning. The girl asked them to wait, because the children had not yet managed to climb onto the ship. She saw people pushing them on the shore. The man was shocked by this. And at that moment, the girl jumped out of the ship, saying that she would help them. She jumped from boat to boat, quickly approaching the shore. The man thought she was very brave. Kakyuu thought about what to do. If he got involved in a fight, too many people would see him. If he destroyed a dragon with attribute power, even the church would know about its existence. In order to save the stranger, he would have to risk his son by becoming a target for the Holy Knights. If it was best for him, he should run, but he was unsure if that was the right choice. He clenched his hands until they trembled. He realized that he couldn't. There were a lot of scars on the dragon's body. Suddenly, the chain began to wrap around one of its paws. A man who was on one of the sinking ships threw it on him. A girl ran along it. People around called on everyone to look at what was happening. Elsa confidently approached the dragon, preparing her sword. Meanwhile, the dragon tried to pull out his paw, and also prepared a powerful flame for an attack. The girl, without thinking, pounced on him. She began to strike his tough scales with a large number of blades. However, she could not penetrate them, and her blades broke. The dragon began to dodge the blows. The girl began to fall. She used the rope to grab him again, wrapping it around his tail. However, he moved very quickly, causing her to be thrown from side to side in the air. At some point, she could have hit his wing with a dagger, and her powerful attack was able to tear the dragon's wing into several pieces. He remained in the air, chained to the ship, looking at his wing. After that, he began to violently break free, flying in the opposite direction, but the ship prevented him from moving, resting against the buildings and destroying them. In the end, the chain broke, and the dragon fell on the city. The girl landed not far from him. From the roof of the building, she looked down at the fallen dragon, standing in front of her with a torn wing in the rubble of the buildings. The people on the ground were trying to escape from them. She was high above him, the smoke from his attacks billowing in the sky. The protagonist, looking at her, recognized her as the girl who had previously saved his child. Elsa thought that this fire dragon, judging by its slow movements, was covered in wounds. She wondered if people had done this. Were they really that stupid to anger him and provoke him to attack the city? In any case, she had no chance against him in an open fight. She looked at Sabas leading the children to the boat. She needed to at least buy time for their escape. She decided to use the twilight. The dragon was confused, and the guy watching this realized that this was body-strengthening magic, as well as blinding magic. The girl was ready to defend herself. Since the dragon had temporarily lost its time, she was able to use the blade dance on it, striking it with a large number of blows. People shouted that she was doing well and that she would defeat the dragon. The main character had a different opinion. She did not leave him any damage at all. Meanwhile, new wounds began to appear on her. The veins on her face bulged from the strain. Screaming, she rushed at him again, but her strength was leaving her. The guy realized that things were bad. She was just trying to buy time. He shouted to the people not to run away from there urgently. The dragon, meanwhile, managed to strike the girl with his wing, causing her to fly away from him. She noticed the destruction, causing debris to fly towards the citizens. She headed to help them. She hit a piece of the wall with such force that it flew away. However, the fragments had caused her wounds, and the dragon was already ready to attack again. He began to breathe fire, causing people to run in all directions, realizing that she had been defeated and they needed to escape. The protagonist managed to save the girl, dragging her into an alley. He asked her if she remembered him. With a smile, he added that he could not allow his son's benefactor to disappear before his eyes. The surprised girl recognized him. She wanted to remember why he was there. He said they didn't have time now, so he asked her to answer one question quickly. He wondered if she could cast a blindness spell on everyone nearby. The amazed girl replied that she could, but she didn't understand why he needed it. He didn't answer her, he just looked at her. She replied that she could only do it for a few seconds. He said that was enough. This is even more than necessary. He handed the child to the girl, who was trying to understand what he was going to do. He told her that he wanted to destroy the fire dragon. The stunned girl repeated his words. After that, she applied the veil of twilight. She wondered where she got such a déjà vu from. There is a great deal of confidence in the words of this man. He actually defines the surrounding situation using the power of sound. He angrily told the fire dragon to look at him. The people around him screamed that they couldn't see anything. The dragon also began to shake its head to the side, trying to find its opponent. Then it noticed the protagonist and rushed to attack him, opening its mouth wide. Kakyuu delivered a single powerful blow that froze the dragon in place. The attack literally blew it to pieces. The girl looked at what was happening in shock. Her magic began to dissipate. Kakyuu approached her and asked if her name was Elsa. Taking her hand and stroking the child's head, he said that he had one request for her. Kneeling down in front of her, he asked if she could take on the role of mother to this child. Her face literally froze in shock. Meanwhile, the people began to look at the dragon. A few months ago, in the magical land of Lawrence, in the depths of the royal castle, a man said that he had a secret mission for the son of the river Elsa, a loyal servant of the royal palace. The girl was from the intelligence department of the kingdom. The man added that a secret meeting between a merchant from the Dark Guild and an aristocrat was planned for that night in the former barracks of the Knightly Order. The subject of their deal would be artifacts whose appearance could threaten the well-being of the people. In the name of the prosperity of the magical kingdom, she must eliminate the merchant shortly before the deal, right at the crime scene. The girl went on her assigned mission. She hurt the man who was there, who called her name in pain. Hearing this voice, the girl could not believe it. She had His Majesty the King of their country in her arms. She realized that the order had been given to her by a swindler who had his own plans. She immediately stopped in front of the court where Elsa's fate was decided. When she was given her punishment, she tried to resist, claiming that it was a secret mission and that a merchant from a dark guild was supposed to be there. The man told her to shut up. The first prince of the magical kingdom of Erud, Lawrence, was angry. She was told that His Highness had left for a visit to another kingdom that day. After that, they ordered her to be taken away, but she continued to ask to be heard. She screamed that it was a plot. If it was not exposed, the kingdom itself would be in danger. So she asked to be heard. She was ordered to stop resisting. Noticing her brother, she began to beg him to investigate. However, he ignored her, and she was dragged out the door. She heard that His Majesty had fallen into a coma. People were wondering why an attempted coup d'etat was not punishable by death. They said it was because they were afraid of the revenge of her secret clan. Everyone hated her. They doubted that anyone would buy such a criminal. And Sebastian got such an unpleasant task. She thought about how she was deceived. She swore allegiance, but in the end, why was she so disgraced? What did they want to achieve with this? It was she who, with her own hands, tried to harm His Majesty, whom she respected as much as her own father. She remembered how he treated her. What she did was unacceptable. One day, a merchant came to her cell and told her that they were going to Elvrant. This is the land of elves, there might be a buyer there. To avoid the guards, they would continue through Nagraja and the old Borkley Forest Road. If they encountered monsters along the way, he would count on the girl. Noticing the goblins carrying the child, she thought about atonement. She wanted to improve. She didn't understand what she needed to do for that. After hearing the words of gratitude from the main character, she realized that she didn't want to be a sinner anymore. And now, holding a child in her arms and hearing the offer to become a mother for him from the main character, she was simply shocked by what was happening. At present, chaos reigned in the kingdom of Elfland, in the port of Bamora. People tried to figure out what the dragon had done earlier. The blushing girl looked at the guy who was thinking about what he had just said. It sounded good, but the words were ambiguous, like he was a scammer trying to sell a vacuum cleaner. She asked him again, to which he replied that it was not quite so. He meant something else. And at that moment a merchant appeared, who called Elsa. The girl called out to him, causing Kakyuu to be surprised to hear his name. Sebas apologized for interrupting. The blushing boy and girl held each other's hands. They shouted together that he wouldn't be in the way at all. The man said that when he saw the dragon's body, he was shocked. He wondered if the girl had done it. She tried to deny it, but the protagonist said that it was she. He added that at that moment, everything around him suddenly plunged into darkness. He could not see anything. And then there was a terrible roar, and the dragon flew into pieces. He does not know exactly what happened, but it was possible that it was a meteorite or another natural phenomenon. The girl asked the man if the children were okay. He said she had helped them. They must be illegitimate. The real ones must have a magical seal, which they do not have anywhere on their bodies. At this time, the children were crying big tears, asking if the dragon had left. They wanted to go home. Elsa hugged them and said that everything was fine now. They should not be afraid. Kakyuu watched what was happening with a smile. Sebas said that they would take the children with his men to the church of the holy city, but he wondered what would happen to the girl. She did not know what to answer. Sebas asked the boy if he wanted to take her. He replied that it was natural, But before that, he wanted to clarify something with Elsa herself. He introduced himself again as Kakyuu, a middling merchant from Ural, a kingdom located north of the Hoppo Sea. As he had said beforehand, he wanted her to become the mother of this child, that is, his wife. Watching her, he realized that he lacked what she had, and she is someone he can trust. He remembered his thoughts that in order to save the stranger, he would have to risk the boy by becoming a target for the Holy Knights. And if she agreed, he would, of course, cancel all contact. He didn't want her to remain like this, but wanted her to become his equal. He wondered what she would say to that. Could she help him raise this child, ours, so that he would grow up happy? Sabas was pleased with these words. However, remembering the past, the girl bowed and declined his request. She added that she was a criminal, sentenced for a serious crime. Freeing her from her shackles would not atone for her sins, and she certainly had no right to become a mother. The boy understood what she was talking about. He said with a smile that he was very sorry. He apologized for suddenly attacking them like that and thanked them for the answer. Sabas looked at the girl and decided to say something. Pointing to the boat, he said he would have to do some work preparing for departure. Elsa asked to be allowed to help, to which he replied that the wounded man would only get in the way, so she should sit in that shed. And he also got caught asking the main character to take care of Elsa and handed him bandages and medicine. Coming closer to the guy, he wished him luck, but he did not understand what he meant. Later, Kakyuu was treating the wounds of a girl who was holding a child. He asked if he could help her. She agreed, and he thought he needed to take a closer look, then use the devil's eye. He saw great disappointment in someone, suspicion, anger, and still remaining loyalty. It seems that her psyche is seriously damaged. She was probably betrayed by a person she trusted. But this feeling surpasses the regret and guilt she felt before. The meaning of her words goes very deep. And despite this, an ordinary person in such a situation would, of course, withdraw into themselves or fall into despair. But she is completely calm, apparently not wanting to disturb those around her. Perhaps this is the result of her long life as a dark elf, or it is a manifestation of her deep love. Looking at her, he thought that he still wanted her love, he needed to get it, he said that the treatment was over. She thanked him, he said that she could give him ours. The baby was sleeping peacefully in her arms at the time. He asked if she could hold him a little longer. The girl agreed and thought that she seemed to be beginning to understand why she had believed his words earlier. Elsa thinks that both then and now, the main character trusted her with his son. She felt that he trusted her. The girl notes that she has never had such a level of trust with anyone else. But they say that bad people always betray, that such a concept as trust no longer exists. The girl looked at the guy and their eyes met. Kakyuu turned to Elsa and remembered her words about her not being worthy of being a mother. But he doesn't think so. He doesn't care what she did, he knows nothing. But he only knows that with those very hands defiled by sin, she saved many lives. Sitting against the wall, the young man says that he doesn't know how she feels about herself. But for him, she has gone through so many trials. And still, without hesitation, she is ready to give her life for the sake of justice. Touching the cheek of her sleeping son, the hero said that it was her strength that he and ours needed so much. The girl lowered her head and thought about how to object. The young man said that for her, weakness simply means endlessly enduring punishment. If a person who has committed a crime worthy of death becomes a servant, then this is essentially a lifelong service. Kakyuu asked if she really thought this was a fair punishment. The girl clenched her teeth. She screamed that she understood everything. She didn't understand what he was suggesting. Give up trying to atone for her guilt because she couldn't. Live happily with him. But she couldn't forgive herself, so she chose punishment. Tears flow from her eyes. She added that such a strong person as the hero cannot understand her feelings. Suddenly Ars woke up from her screams and started screaming. Elsa started calming him down. The young man looked at this and smiled. Kakyuu noted that he is strong, but he can compare with the girl in caring for Ars. She is clumsy, she can't even change a diaper properly. One day, in a moment of weakness, his son was almost kidnapped. Luckily, the girl helped him. Strength and nobility are important, but they are not enough. They need each other's support to survive. Ars smiled and held Elsa's finger. The hero stood up and said that he was ready to help her with redemption, if she would help him with the child. He asked her what it means to atone for her guilt. He wants to understand what reasons and conditions she believes in. The girl remembers the moment when she came to some class, the main root, the basis of justice. Elsa asked the man about this management of the orphanage. The old man answered that it was his payment for his sins. He explains that during his 100+ years of rule, he had dragged the people into unwanted wars many times, and each time there were children who had lost their parents. The king turned to Elsa and said that because of her service, her hands would now serve the country, and they could be launched. However, he asked her not to forget that her power was intended for the future of their country. The girl suddenly realized that she was her justice, and understood that she needed to atone. She decided to inherit the will of His Majesty. She wiped away her tears and said what she had to atone for. That is what children can create with their laughter alone. Kakyuu smiled and said that it was a coincidence of interests. He extended his hand to her and suggested that they start over and make their child laugh. At first the girl reached for him, but suddenly painful memories flashed through her mind, and her hand began to tremble. But then the main character took her hand and said that everything was fine. He helped her up and promised that he would never betray her. And someday it will definitely prove it. Boxes are burning in the sea. Someone calls the chief. The man suggests to the chief to return back quickly. Will he really believe the girl and wait for the dragon to attack them? The chief agreed and ordered to turn the ship around. The man doesn't understand why he's so protective of this girl. She's willing to risk her life to stay in one place with the dragon. Doesn't he understand that she's just crazy? She's just a servant. The man winked and said that it was their credo to value even the most insignificant servants. The boss turned away, looked into the distance, and decided to add something. He told how a very respected person had strictly ordered him to treat her with due respect. The subordinate pursed his lips. The boss looked through the telescope and said that the fire dragon was already heading inland, and they could dock now. They had to go save the children for now. The old man stands with horror frozen on his face. There's a monster's body lying in the middle of the street. Someone asks what happened here. And suddenly, when everything around was plunged into darkness, there was a thunderous crack, as bright as lightning. He rushed through the crowd and saw something. The fire dragon had been killed by a man. It was impossible. He suggests that it is a natural disaster or an accident. The boy called to come to him. He said that there were fire dragon materials here. Even one scale was worth at least 10 coins. The first one would get the slippers. The old man ran and thought that this would not work. This was a great opportunity to get money to restore his burned shop. Suddenly, a man exploded at the dragon and told everyone to stand still. The guy asked who he was, and the next moment his head flew off his shoulders. The one who took the life of the young man is called the Lion King, Vrith. He declared that from now on this city would be their territory, reborn in the glory of the lion. He told them to obey. The old man was shocked, and Vrita shouted that they would provide housing and work to everyone who obeyed. Elsa asks the guy to wait. She doesn't understand what's going on here. Kakyuu replied that it was teleportation magic. He assumed that it was her first time. She replied that it was her first time. Ars smiled. The girl asked why the end point of teleportation was in the air. The young man apologized for this and added that he could lie down. This surprised the girl. Kakyuu welcomed the girl home. A few minutes ago, on the opposite bank of the Bamola, Elsa demanded proof that he would not betray her. The young man replied that it was not difficult. They use a service contract. The girl looked at him sadly. The boss put the seal on the boy and explained that it was a magical seal that sealed the relationship between master and servant, according to the terms of the service contract. He clarified the boy's confidence. If the master wishes to fulfill any of the conditions set out in the contract, he can use the seal to bind the servant's body and deprive him of his freedom. Elsa asked if he really wanted to sleep as her servant. The guy confirmed her guess with a wide smile. She doesn't understand what all this means. Kakyuu approached her and explained that they would become each other's masters and servants at the same time. They would call it a contract of mutual service. The girl was surprised, and the guy added that none of them would be able to betray the other. Mr. Seabass pointed out that they looked like a real married couple. The girl asked him again about his confidence. He asked her to stop thinking negatively about this proposal. He was definitely not trying to set her up. Sebas told them to apply blood seals to each other's bodies. The heroes did so. Everything around them began to glow. At present, the great forest of Broccoli, Kakyu's base. The heroes landed in front of the house. The young man explained that he had repurposed an old abandoned fortress. He thought it would be an ideal place for a shelter. The girl mentally repeated his words about the shelter, but the hero distracted her from her thoughts and called her to enter the house. There was chaos inside. The young man apologized for all the mess. Elsa looked to the side and noticed that that part was emitting such a dark magical glow. The guy explained that he puts bones and skins of elemental dragons and other strong monsters there. While Kakyuu was putting ours to bed, the girl couldn't figure out who this guy even was. He easily defeats elemental dragons, uses teleportation and levitation without uttering a single word of spells. Only a legendary hero or a powerful demonic general can do this, and yet he calls himself just an average merchant from the north. She can't believe he seriously thinks that. And he looks like some kind of swindler. But then she remembered his words that he would help her atone for her guilt, and she would help him raise the child. The guy turned to the girl. He suggested that she calmly discuss the terms of their agreement again. His condition for her is to become a mother for Ars. Her condition for her husband is to help her atone for her guilt. Atonement implies helping children left without parents. The girl said that she would try to be a good mother from the very beginning. Kakyuu said that he would quickly take care of the garden and animals, and Elsa would clean up the whole house in the meantime. It was already evening. The girl lit a candle. Ars was sleeping. The girl sighed and smiled, looking at the child. She had finally finished cleaning. She looked out the window and noticed a clay doll in the image of Kakyuu. She was surprised that he could even control them. The girl does not understand why he is hiding. Such a strong man should hide for some reason. She assumed that he was plotting something. However, she pushed these thoughts away and said that she also had a dark past that she did not want to remember. The hero saved her life, and she herself decided to become his servant in order to win his trust. She understands that deep down she trusts him. His current worries come from a completely different source. She looked at her hand and thought about how bloody it was. Was she really worthy of being a mother? She wanted to say something, but she began to lose consciousness. The hero entered the house and noted what he had managed to do before sunset, and suddenly he noticed a girl lying on the floor. Elsa's earliest memory is of training with her brother. The people of her village considered martial skill a duty, and both men and capable women underwent rigorous combat training. According to the customs of their village, during military training, men and women were completely separated. Under the watchful eye of her strict father, the village chief, she strived to excel, competing with her talented older brother and other students. In her young world, she had no mother, nowhere at all. Elsa opened her eyes after losing consciousness. She was lying on a bed with an IV drip. Kakyuu was saved by the bed. The girl called her husband. He raised his head and opened his eyes in surprise. He started crying and saying that he was very happy. The girl looked at the guy with bewilderment and asked how long she had slept. He answered that she had slept for about 2.5 days. The girl tried to get up, arguing that she had a lot of things to do. The young man asked her to wait. She had a temperature. She hadn't gotten out of bed for 2 days. She shouldn't get up so suddenly. The girl apologized to him. The young man noted that with such wounds it was impossible. Moreover, it was his fault that he decided to let her rest after the battle with the fire dragon. He asked her forgiveness for not being able to heal with magic. Elsa was surprised that her husband had magic that he couldn't use. He answered that yes. He placed a cloth on her forehead and said that not all magic was within his control. He regrets that he can't use any magic. Then the boy remembered about the milk. He said the girls thought that he would be in the barn. If she needed anything, she could call him in the doll and he would come. The girl asked again about the doll. The boy explained that it was a portable mini Kakyuu. It had magic embedded in it that allowed it to communicate with its owner, even if they were far apart. The girl noted that it was convenient. The guy also brought a hot vegetable soup that he had prepared especially for her so that she could eat it as soon as she woke up. Thanks to the state preservation spell, it was as fresh and warm as if it had just been cooked. He advised her not to pounce on food when she was very hungry. It was bad for her body. She needed to eat slowly, drinking water. Then the guy left. The girl smiled. She noticed the whole situation around her and thought that the hero had been looking after her all this time, while simultaneously looking after the child. Thanks to him, she briefly immersed herself in memories of her mother. It was during one of her training sessions. She was so badly injured that she was bedridden, just like now. When she woke up, she saw that her mother was sitting next to her and taking care of her. She doesn't remember the details of the conversation, but she thinks she wanted to apologize. She probably argued with her father a lot during that period and even disobeyed him. There was a bruise on her cheek. Maybe he didn't hit her because of her. The girl suggested that happiness lies in simple conversations and simple time spent together. It doesn't matter if she feels guilty about the child, or if she is an incomprehensible creature. The main thing is to be a good parent sincerely and with all your heart, and the child will definitely feel it. Elsa also decided to try to be a good parent. She decided to get out of bed and, sitting down, noticed the IV. She started to tug at it and then finally pulled it out. Then she licked the injection site. Taking a cup of soup in her hands, she took a sip and said that it was very tasty. After changing and leaving the room, the girl greeted her husband. He was holding ours and asked how she was feeling. Looking at what was happening, the girl thought that the order she had brought had been blown away by the wind. Kakyuu asked ours to wait. Suddenly the child started screaming and unexpectedly fired. Elsa was shocked. The hero exhaled and noticed that it was another hole in the wall. The girl was shocked. Elsa thought that they were the strangest father and son she knew. Well, this family had a hard road ahead of them. Elsa announced the start of their first family meeting. Topic of discussion: the unexpected explosion of their son's magic spell, ours. The child looked at his parents and smiled. About the races of another world. Kakyuu tells that in another world there are many races that do not exist on Earth. Humanity is divided into humans, elves and dark elves, dragon people, dwarves and beastmen. There are also demons and angels. Elsa sweeps early in the morning. The sun began to rise. The girl looked at this sun. The wife began to wake her husband and reminded him that it was time for him to clean the barn. She pulled the blanket off him and threw him on the floor. Then she began to clean the house, change Ars's clothes, and prepare the bath. Only 2 days have passed since Elsa's recovery, but life in their home has changed dramatically. By dividing up the household chores, he had more free time. Thanks to this, he can devote more time to training, and he has already begun to perfect the control of the mini Kakyuu. The hero mentally praised himself for finding a jack of all trades. Suddenly, his wife called him and said that she had come with goat's milk. But in all this, there is one but. The hero fed the child milk. Elsa stood nearby. The boy was very ill. A girl decided to intervene in this matter. She gave him milk and he began to drink it calmly. Kakyuu thinks that Ars is more attached to Elsa than to him. The girl decided to make breakfast, but the young man stopped her and said that he would make breakfast. He would not allow him to be closer to her than to him. He would prove that he could be useful too. He cooked a steak from a fanged boar. The girl thanked the goddess for this gift and began to eat. She said that it was delicious. The young man thought about how he had suffered for so many years, trying to make at least something edible out of these hellishly disgusting ingredients. After all, this was the fruit of his 1,000-year-old labors. He tried his dish and was shocked. It was tasteless and sweet. He didn't understand. Was he really that stupid? Was he the main character of some manga? But Elsa said it was delicious. The girl asked her husband for forgiveness. She said that every family has its own special taste passed down from generation to generation. She didn't know about it at all, thinking about getting up to the stove. She thanked her husband. The hero thought that she was too perfect. Does the hero have any chance at all? The girl asked her husband about his plans for the day. He answered that he wanted to try a spell to catch insects in the garden. Suddenly, Ars began to cry. The hero decided to approach him himself. He took the child in his arms and he peed on him. The wet young man notices that Ars is full of energy. Elsa turned to her husband. She suggested calling a family council. She thinks something is wrong. The boy explains that Ars' origin is a little special. The girl doesn't think so. She noticed that when her husband was courting him, only then could he use magic. The guy closed his eyes, began to think, and asked what it meant. She replied that the cause of the explosion was in the gentleman. The guy started screaming. Perhaps they were mistaken in thinking it was an explosion. In fact, the boy may have acted consciously. For example, when the master uses magic in front of the boy to make him happy, he does not scold him, but laughs. Perhaps the boy realized that by using magic, he can make the master happy. The boy realized that he had created half of these problems for himself. The girl confirmed this. Kakyuu said that he was a terrible parent. He wanted to turn into a cocoon and disappear. Elsa asked her husband not to worry. Since they had found the cause, they could fix everything. They needed to work together. If he tries to be a good father, then their child will definitely feel it. The girl thinks that thanks to the guy, she realized her mistake. Kakyuu didn't understand what she was talking about. She had just said that she didn't have any qualities that make a good mother. She was 100 times better at being a parent than he was. The girl thinks that their baby just wants to please him. Maybe he does it a little strange, but he loves him very much. She looked at Ars and asked about him just wanting to please his dad. He made a sound. The cocoon that Kakyuu was in began to shake, and then the hero got out of it and attacked Ars. Ars began to cry. A bright light pierced the hero. Several days passed. Elsa's prediction was correct. After the changes made to his upbringing, Ars completely stopped showing uncontrollable bursts of magic. The hero stood in a daze. He thought about whether this house needed him at all, but he immediately drove these thoughts away. He also copes well with animals and work in the field, thanks to the fact that he lived in the tree Jorn. If the wheat grows, they will have enough to eat, and if they sell it, they will have money. Everything will be fine. This family needs him. It started raining heavily. The hero fell to his knees and said that his wheat field was destroyed. Elsa was shocked by the guy's behavior. It's just wheat. Nothing will grow here anyway. She explained that everyone here eats potatoes and rice. Because of the weather, nothing like that grows. The young man doesn't understand what he's doing. Everything is going wrong for him. And all Ars does is stick to Elsa. He repeated the words about how he only does what he does, sticks to Elsa, and got angry. It was jealousy. He slapped himself on the cheeks to bring him to his senses. The girl was taken aback. He mentally reassures himself. He is so ancient. Has he really forgotten why he got involved with this elf? He has his own task. Kakyuu stood up and told Elsa that he would be leaving for a few days. The girl asked where he was going. He replied that due to the destruction of the harvest in the fields of the Merchants' Guild of the Holy City, the state is experiencing an acute shortage of funds. He intends to open his own business, conduct a thorough analysis of the market, and find reliable buyers. Astraga, the holy city of the United Kingdom of Elbrant. The employees are shocked that the hero has a certificate from the Northern Guild Wexel and a letter of recommendation from the great merchant Sebastian. The young man asked them about registration. He thinks that the check will take at least a week, but as they say, it is useful to have good connections. Having asked for help, the hero decided that it was time to make new acquaintances. A merchant from the country of Lorenz, Loran, says he is in despair. In this country, the Elbat River often overflows in the lower reaches during the rainy season, making roads and ferries unusable. Lawrence country trader. Shuren added that this is why they, Lawrence traders, use the detour through the forest, crossing by boat from the upper reaches of the Bamola River. They assume that the hero heard about the recent appearance of a dragon in the vicinity of Pomora. Its death caused violent clashes between the guilds, and some strange people won, and their commander is called Vidra, and the road was blocked. And on the road that remained, there were many monsters. Kakyuu asked how to exterminate them. The girl said that during the rains, when the water creatures crawl out onto the land, all the knights are busy, it won't do anything. And by sea, it's impossible, the main character thought. The next day, Kakyuu brought the monster paws to the Lorenz merchants. They were shocked. Shuren refused to believe that he had defeated all the creatures in one day. It was impossible. She told him that he would not be able to deceive her. The young man explained that he had some mercenary friends, he had asked them for help even before he came here, and so today they were supposed to bring the trophy. The girl assumed that the young man had been pretending to be stupid all this time. Loran noted that these were definitely the paws of monsters. The hero thinks that he has no connections and that he defeated this monster himself, but this is just a lie to make it easier. Loran asks why he didn't tell them everything right away. Does he really want them to pay him for it? The girl says that they don't have money. In return, the young man asked them to tell him about the market prices of their goods and trade routes, and perhaps introduce him to their suppliers. The merchants exchanged glances. Kakyuu tells about some brother and sister who are trading salt, and tomorrow he will be introduced to the bosses of the Kairen merchant fleet. Elsa is happy about her husband's success. She congratulated him. They talked on Mini Elsa. She is like a telephone, only in the form of a doll. Kakyuu said that everything would become clear tomorrow, and mentally he asked the girl to praise him because he is not such a slacker. He says that tomorrow he will have a very busy day, so he will not be able to answer the phone. That's what he wanted to say. The girl said that she understood everything. She wished her husband luck from the goddess. The guy asked her to say hello to Ars. Having passed out, the guy lay down on the bed. He told Ars to wait for him. He would show him how cool his father was. Strong, the sea merchant from L Branch, shook the boy's hand and said that he was ready to give priority to all trade to them. He offered to make a deal. He was especially interested in his connection with the mercenaries. This was very important, especially during the rainy season, when the safety of transportation was in great question. The hero was flattered. He suggested getting straight to the point. He says that these goods are salt, which he sells, and all sorts of materials, meat from monsters. He wanted to show how suddenly the phone rang. It was Elsa calling. He thought to himself that he had said that he wouldn't be able to answer the phone today. Silna asked if everything was okay. The young man replied that everything was okay and suggested continuing the negotiations. And so at home, everything falls out of his hands, nothing works out, so at least at work he should have a grand success. Silna thanked the guy for the time spent together. Kakyuu said that they should get together again sometime and have a drink. The girl said that he doesn't know how to drink alcohol. The merchant laughed. The young man lay down on the bed and exhaled. Today he hit the jackpot. Now when he gets home, he will definitely be showered with compliments. He remembered his phone, which was simply blowing up with notifications. He assumed that something had happened. This would need to be clarified while he was reporting. Also reported that they had a problem and it concerned Ars. The young man tensed, and the next moment he teleported home. He ran inside and asked about what happened to Ars. However, he could not enter. He was stopped by a terrible heat. The hero did not understand where he was from. Elsa called her husband. She explained that his temperature had started to rise since lunchtime, and recently it had become simply unbearable, as if he was burning. The young man understood that the daytime message was about exactly this. Elsa does not understand anything. No rash, no breathing problems. She has never seen the temperature rise so high and without reason. If the cause is unknown, then you can't brew a cure. If it's because of his dragon nature, then if he only had healing magic. And in general, can it be cured with magic? Elsa called her husband. She said that she would now go and collect all the healing herbs that she could find. The young man tried to object and go himself, because it was dangerous. The girl said that he didn't know much about the local vegetation, but she sees better in the dark, and her husband should be with their son. She left. The young man thought that he was completely useless. Then he heard Ars calling. The boy reached out to his father and grabbed his finger. The hero assumed that the child was encouraging him. Such a worthless father, he couldn't do anything for him. He apologizes to his son. Suddenly, Elsa returns. She sees that the boy is crying and exhaling. The guy didn't understand why she came back so early. She explained that she was going to get some medicinal herbs, but at the entrance to the forest, she saw this and remembered. This is the Demon Master, one of the types of magical trees that grows quickly, consuming a huge amount of mana. She brought a branch of this tree to the child. The plant embraced the baby's hand and began to grow. It grew to an extraordinary size. Elsa noticed that everything was as she thought. The guy didn't understand what she was talking about. She answered what she had learned from the village elder as a child, that elves and other races with strong magic sometimes had this. Their magical power grew faster than their body, and this could lead to its instability. The boy assumed that it was a magical breakdown. The girl confirmed it, but since the Demon Master had absorbed some of the magic, the temperature should drop soon. Kakyuu felt relieved and sank to the floor. He thanked Elsa. He admitted that he had been focused only on himself and had not noticed anything around him. He made a contract with Elsa because he knew they couldn't make it, but then he got jealous and ruined everything. He tried to make up for lost time with work, but in the end he forgot all about Ars. Elsa said that since he left home, the baby cried at night and it was impossible to cope with him, especially when he had a fever. For him, the main character is the most reliable and irreplaceable person, and for the girl too. The young man burst into tears and thanked Elsa. Ars's magical breakdown was probably accelerated by the fact that they suppressed that magical explosion. But it was bound to happen sooner or later. From now on, they would regularly use the Demon Master to draw out excess magic. The husband is at work, and Elsa is at home. She suggested dividing the responsibilities, and they will act together, each in their own area of competence. They will not hide their thoughts, but will openly express their opinions. Today she cooked dinner. She cooked a sauté of goat and bear paws with a sauce of wild mushrooms. The young man assumed that she wanted to poison him. He reassured himself that no matter how strange it looked, the taste would definitely be excellent. He ate a piece, and the next moment he fell headfirst into the plate. It was terrible. Elsa said that her cooking was good, but not so good that you could dive into it like into a swimming pool. The young man decided that he would now cook. Lord Cebus is shocked that the protagonist wants to become his servant. He agreed and added that there were some reasons. The man noted that without a respectful reason it would be impossible. The young man understood him and suggested doing everything beautifully. He wants to buy Elsa, but he doesn't have the country's money, so he will borrow from Cebus and become his debtor. The man noted that the currency of the Euro Kingdom is also suitable. And then, when Elsa becomes his servant, she will be able to buy herself out. The girl was surprised. Kakyuu told the girl that everything was already thought out and asked her not to worry. He was rummaging through the magic bag. It is a magical storage item with a large space inside, expanded by magic. From there, he pulled out many materials from magical beasts and told Elsa to take them. She noticed that he contradicted himself. Cebus said that such a sum should be enough. Kakyuu lied about having connections with good mercenaries. Elsa didn't understand why he was making things so complicated in order to match her status. He replied with a smile that this was the best way to tell her that he was counting on her. The girl was stunned by such a statement, and then she blushed very deeply. She didn't understand what was wrong with this man. Extra 5. Teleportation. Elsa said that today she would like to say a few words to her husband. He tensed up as he held Ars in his arms. While the child slept, they decided to discuss teleportation. The girl asked him why he teleported in the air every time. He immediately apologized. He explains that if you don't set precise coordinates when teleporting, you can end up anywhere, for example, underground or in water. So to make sure he avoids accidents, he teleports into the sky. The girl asked about what it turns out he just needs to set up the necessary coordinates. So why hasn't he set them up yet? The guy looked away. He answered that he had no time for it. Elsa ordered him to solve this issue as soon as possible. The young man quickly dealt with this problem. Children are a real miracle. When a person realizes that he is responsible for a little person, he feels such a surge of strength and love. Education is a mutual process in which parents and children learn and develop. Kakyuu says that when you live for someone, especially for a child, he feels truly alive. It's like he's found his purpose. Life takes on a special meaning. Arno noticed that his friend had become just like his father. The bartender handed him a drink and said that all he had to do was to show off the image of the ideal husband. The hero said that he was already making every effort. His friend asked him if he had kissed Elsa yet. The guy choked on his drink. He began to deny everything and said that they were bound only by a contract. The girl noted that if Alma found out about this, she would be deeply disappointed, so she offered to clarify the situation. Arno suggested that Elsa does not attract him at all. The hero denies this, but he is stopped by the fact that he is a demon, not a human, not even an elf. The friend realized that the young man had never even kissed in his life. Kakyuu looked away and began to deny it. Arno decided to help his friend and put his lips out for a kiss. The hero tried to stop him. Suddenly, Kakyuu headbutted Elsa's head. They both grabbed their foreheads to ease the pain. The girl turned away. The guy said her name and asked what was going on. She blushed, looked away, and said that it was already morning, and she came to wake him up. July 1014 of the sacred calendar, the kingdom of Elfland, the great forest of Broccoli. Ars entered the barn where his father was. At that moment, Kakyuu was watching a lamb that had just been born. The boy asked what it was. The young man noted that his son was alone again, which meant that his mother would scold him. Taking the child in his arms, the hero explained to him that it was a kid born that morning. He called the boy his older brother and asked him to be kind to the animal. The boy was delighted and turned to his father, asking if he really was his brother. Kakyuu confirmed everything. In front of the heroes, there is a birthday cake with one candle. Today is Ars's holiday, his birthday. Kakyuu thinks that today is exactly 1 year since Ars became part of their family. The hero doesn't know when he was born, so he considers his birthday to be the day he found him. The guy told his son that his mom and dad had prepared gifts for him. Kakyuu prepared a large encyclopedia of magical creatures with pictures, and Elsa gave a bilingual guide and a historical reference book. The hero looked at his wife with incomprehension, and then he asked whether such books were equal to the boy. She answered that in her village they begin to teach children from the moment they begin to walk. The young man asked about the age at which elves begin to walk. The girl skillfully avoided the answer, saying that they should not make Ars as lazy as the hero. They continued their quarrel. Ars watched it silently, and with each new cry, he began to tremble. Tears started coming out of his eyes, and he shouted at his parents to stop arguing. Kakyuu and Elsa were struck by Ars's beauty. They told him that they were not arguing and looked at each other. The girl apologized and admitted that she had been a little unrestrained. She needed to try before judging. The hero said that he was wrong. He didn't know what would make the child happy and said too much. After some time, Ars went to catch insects. Elsa did not understand why he wanted to do this. She suggested that he was going to eat them. The hero explained that it was just a game. Ars saw some creatures in the encyclopedia and wanted to catch them, although they are unlikely to live in their area. Ars stood near a tree. Kakyuu asked him not to go too far. Suddenly the boy took out some kind of insect. The hero proudly declared that the boy was just like his father. He suggested that he also caught insects when he was little, although he no longer remembers. Elsa blushed and said that she would like to see her husband's childhood, and the guy at that moment remembered Arno's words about their kiss. Suddenly a bat flew over the girl and she leaned against the guy. They found themselves very close to each other. Their eyes met, but the next moment they had already separated. Elsa and Kakyuu blushed. They felt awkward with each other. Ars shouted and pointed somewhere. He pointed somewhere to the side and said that there was something there. There lay a baby fire dragon. The boy continued pointing at the creature. The young man did not understand where the dragon came from. Elsa asked her son not to go close to the dragon. She tried to pick him up, and he started crying and saying that he was a little brother. Ars pouted and hugged the cub. Kakyuu tried to save the situation by saying that the dragon was still very small. She got angry and started screaming that the child could get bitten or get sick. The dragon tried to say something. However, the elf glared at him angrily, and he ran away. Ars began to cry, and the hero did not know what to do. That day, Ars cried until the evening, until he got tired, and the next day he often looked anxiously towards the forest. Elsa felt sorry for Ars. Suddenly Kakyuu jumped up and started getting ready. He was late for something. The girl asked him why he was making noise in the morning. He replied that there was more bidding in Baymore today. He didn't know exactly when the bidding would start for the lot he wanted, so he had to hurry, otherwise he would be late. He put on his glove. However, it broke. He was upset because Alma had given him these gloves. He thought that it was no wonder they were torn. He wears them every day. He thinks about what to do. He can't drive with torn gloves, but he doesn't have time. Elsa doesn't understand what's happening to him. The young man decides to leave the glove at home and repair it upon his return. He runs out of the house and shouts to Elsa that when he returns, he will definitely clean everything up and asks her not to touch anything. The girl repeated his words about leaving everything as it is, but Ars began to take his father's belt in his mouth. She thought about how children are the flowers of life. Suddenly, she noticed the gloves that her husband was saving. They were torn, and that was why he was so upset. The girl decided to teach him a lesson. An auction house, the trading city of Bamora. Bidding for a servant is underway. Different men bid different amounts. Shuren called out to the hero, who was walking through the crowd. Kakyuu noticed that there were a lot of suspicious types here. The girl explained that since Vidra became the boss, everything had become exactly like this, and all his servants were also illegal. Luran noted that a reward had been placed on the head of the guild leader. The merchant noted that it was time for the mercenaries to prove themselves. Kakyuu heard people talking about him and his connection to powerful mercenaries. They say he works much faster than normal people or adventurers, and yet no one has ever seen him with their own eyes. The young man thought that some non-existent mercenary was becoming more and more famous. The next lot has been announced. 20-year-old Drache wine from the kingdom of Sankarami. The starting bid is 20,000. Kakyuu made a bid of 200,000. His comrades asked him if he really bought it for 10 times the price. He wanted this wine so much. The guy explained that their wedding anniversary was coming up. His wife is a very devoted follower of the goddess cult, and she often says that she wants to dedicate the sacred city to this cult. Since a trip there is not yet possible, he wanted to bring her a little closer to this place by giving her wine from this kingdom. The girl noticed that he is quite a caring husband. Cecile noted that such a caring husband needed a good gift. He took out a bag of gold and said that it was not enough to fully thank him for everything he had done for him. But he still hoped for their further cooperation. Kakyuu bought a ring. At first he thought it was just a trinket, but then he realized that it would fit Elsa perfectly. Over the course of this year, he became attached to her. More like, he fell in love. But he is a demon. He is fundamentally different from ordinary creatures. His soul is the basis of her spiritual essence, and his body is just a clot of magical energy. Demons do not leave offspring. They make contracts with the souls of the dead and turn them into demons, thus increasing their ranks. He was treated in the same way, having made a contract in hell. Therefore, he, like other demons, has neither a reproductive instinct nor the ability to reproduce. But the feelings he has for Elsa, they are human feelings. He suggested that it was just an illusion, a memory of the time when he was human. Does he have the right to give her this ring or not? He remembers the events with Alma, and then understands that now everything is different. This is already a different story. It's raining. Ars looks out the window and worries. He calls his mother. Elsa strokes the boy's head and tells him not to worry, because Daddy has teleportation magic, so the rain doesn't bother him. The child said that he wants to sleep. Kakyuu returned home. The girl greeted him. While wiping his head after the rain, he noticed that his suitcase and gloves were missing. He asked where they were. She answered that they were torn, so she considered them unnecessary and threw them away. And she herself thinks that she carefully hid them and even sewed them up. She knows her husband well. He will notice everything immediately. But she hopes that this will be a lesson for him. Kakyuu grabbed her by the shoulders and asked her what she was wearing. He told her to leave them where they were and not to touch them. With a furious look, the guy says that the girl knew how much he valued these gloves. How could she do such a thing? Elsa lowered her head and confirmed what she knew, that they were dear to him. The guy noticed that she betrayed his trust and threw them away anyway. The girl said that if things were really important to him, he wouldn't throw them around. And besides, in this form, a broken thing is no different from trash. The young man asked what kind of nonsense she was talking. Was this some kind of custom from her homeland again? Did the Dark Elves really have a tradition of giving broken things as a sacrifice to the goddess without thinking twice? The girl hit the guy in the face. Tears welled up in her eyes. And the guy looked at her with an enraged look. Elsa went to her room. Ars watched the scene. Kakyuu stroked the boy's head and said that Mom and Dad needed to be alone. The young man sat on the sofa and drank. The guy spent many hours searching, and all to no avail. He did not believe that she threw them away. Elsa would never do such a thing. How could she not know that they were so dear to him? He realized what he hadn't let her finish. He wondered what she wanted to say. Kakyuu poured himself some wine and drank it down right away. Then he lowers his head. He cried and asked Alma for forgiveness for not being able to protect her last gift. Elsa heard it. She knocked on his door and asked him if he had seen Ars. Here the boy instantly sobered up. The boy walked towards the forest in the rain. The heroes walked through the forest. Everything was in water. The girl asked if Ars had really gone in that direction. Kakyuu confirmed everything. The tracks were hard to see because of the rain, but he could clearly see the remains of the soul. The girl said that it was her fault for hitting him. He, on the contrary, said that it was his fault and asked her forgiveness for allowing himself to insult her homeland. The girl wanted to say something else, but the guy stopped her. He asked her to be silent. Ars and the dragon were sleeping in the hollow. They recognized that baby fire dragon. Had the boy really come to help him? Kakyuu looked at his son and asked if they would scold him for this. Elsa said that in no case. They were sleeping very sweetly. The girl turned to her husband and handed him the gloves. The young man realized that she had not thrown them away and had even sewn them up. He asked her why she lied to him. She replied that she wanted her husband to worry a little. Living together, she saw his sloppy side and weaknesses. But she could never imagine that he would be seriously angry. Sometimes it was as if he penetrated the very depths of her arc, understood her better than she did herself. She was sure that he would never say anything that would hurt her, and so she relaxed too much. Kakyuu thought that it was his fault for using the devil's eye too often. The girl fell to her knees and apologized to the guy. He told her that she was forgiven. He could not justify her trust. He realized that it was all because he hadn't cleaned it up himself. The girl was glad that he had realized his mistake. Elsa had idealized him too much, admired his detachment from worldly affairs, so she didn't act quite as she should have. He is a human being too. The young man thinks that there were people who once made him a man, but he ran away from the realization of this fact and forever missed his chance. Now everything is different. Even if this feeling is a lie, he doesn't want to run away anymore. He took out the rings and turned to Elsa. He asked her to marry him, not because of a contract, but in a real sense. Elsa blushed, and then she smiled and gave her consent. Temporary union is just a page in the life story of true love. Back home, the child and the dragon were sleeping peacefully near the fireplace. Kakyuu says that ours is not his real son. He is the son of his deceased best friend. And after his death, he ran away so far. All because on the way, he got too carried away by a fight with bandits. And he decided to play it safe. Elsa asked her husband to tell her how he learned to wield magic so well. He replied that he had amnesia. After the proposal, he told Elsa everything that had happened to him, except for his true identity as a demon from another world, and the fact that the bandits who attacked Yorn village were the kingdom's holy knights. The girl said that her crime was an attempt on the life of the king. Elsa also shared her past with the guy, about the time when she was a spy, about her homeland and how the first prince betrayed her. The elf assumed that the guy now despised her. He replied that he was simply surprised, and reminded her that he believed in the Elsa he saw. He asked her opinion about his past. She thought about it, smiled, and said that she thought exactly the same. They took each other's hands. March 10-15. About a year and 8 months had passed since he had begun raising Ars. The boy called to the dragon named Bors. Kakyuu says that changes have occurred since that heavy rain. First, Ars made his first friend. His name is Bors. He came up with this name by combining parts of the names Bobo and Ars. Secondly, it seems that Ars has become better at using magic. He healed the chick that Bors found. If Ars's ability to use various types of magic is due to consuming dragon meat, then his healing magic is likely his innate talent. Elsa says that healing magic is so rare that it is called a divine gift. Ars is a true genius. The young man is very proud of Ars. Kakyuu suggested that Elsa move on to their third point. This is the desire to obtain a noble title, or at least try. The girl said that this was not an easy task and asked about the reasons for this decision and how they would achieve it. He explains that their current social status as small traders is extremely unstable, and their dark past can seriously damage their reputation. In order to ensure the safety of their child, it is necessary to raise their social status. This is the first reason. The girl noted that even the status of a privileged merchant would be more than enough. He replied that there is a second reason. He wants to have power to crush the man who set up Elsa. She was surprised and then said that this man was a member of the Lawrence family. The guy asked her if she really thought that the one who set her up was really the first prince. She said that she is not. The scouts have a special spell that helps determine whether the person giving the order is the real prince. Even if that person uses magic to look different, this spell will be able to expose him. So it was some other member of the royal family pretending to be the first prince. It makes no sense for the crown prince, who is first in line to the throne, to take the life of the king. The hero explains that this is the work of some prince of lower rank, who wanted to overthrow both the king and the first prince. The girl reminded him of the promise he promised to fulfill, since he decided to become an aristocrat to get to the bottom of the truth. He says that he promised to help her with her atonement. Since her goal is to continue the king's work, he cannot stand aside when the king is in danger. This is also part of their promise. Kakyuu got down on one knee, took the girl by the hand, and said that he was the one who always brings things to completion. At this time, Ars is training with a sword and fighting with imaginary demons. He says that he, the greatest hero Ars, and now he will teach this monster a lesson. Ars rushed to attack Bors and shouted at him to defend himself. The boy hit him on the nose with a stick, and he pushed him with his head. The child flew a decent distance and then jumped up as if nothing had happened. Bors was already flying towards him. He fell right on the boy, but he managed to react, and then he decided to use sparks. He attacked his friend, the dust rose. Elsa asked Ars to play in a way that would not raise dust, at least until the end of the wash. The boy agreed. Kakyuu noted that Ars was completely obsessed with heroism. Elsa confirmed this and added that this was to be expected from the boy. She noticed that her husband was leaving somewhere. He replied that he would have to work a lot because of one matter. The girl asked him to be careful. He agreed, and the next moment teleported. At that moment, Ars called Elsa. He brought some book. She and Bors looked very happy and cheerful. The girl reads a book about how the hero Ars, who saved the world, returned to his native village, married his bride, and began to live happily. The boy was surprised that he and the hero of the story had the same names. The girl explained that the name Ars is very noble. Ars asked his mother if she had done heroic deeds too. Elsa was embarrassed. She started making excuses and saying that only noble people do such things, and now she is busy. Bors and Ars looked at each other and ran off somewhere, pretending that they were going to play ball. The girl then asked them not to run too far. She leaned against the fence and thought about the wedding. She remembered the plan that Kakyuu told her to become an aristocrat. She pointed out that it was a long-term plan. He agreed and added that he would have to work a lot and even be away from home often, at least for the next 5 years. The girl was surprised and upset, but then she slapped herself on the cheeks to tidy herself up. After that, everyone was busy with their own affairs. Elsa was sweeping. Ars and Bors were picking flowers. Then, while the girl was doing something in the house, the children dragged a large stick and collected flowers and stones. Elsa said that it would soon be dark and asked the boys to come inside. However, the boy did not respond and stood trembling. She approached him to ask what happened and saw that the boy was crying very loudly. She assumed that the boy was injured somewhere, but he pointed to the place where the dragon was sitting. The girl asked with a menacing face whether Bors had really done something. He began to shake his head in denial. Ars continued to cry. Elsa tried to calm him down. At that moment, Kakyuu returned. He saw that Elsa, Bors, and Ars were crying. He did not understand what was happening. Ars cried because he wanted to please his mother, and for this purpose he decided to build a wedding hall, but nothing worked out for him. Elsa was touched by this. She hugged the boy and thanked him for everything he did for her. Then a realization came to her. She started making excuses to her husband. She says that she didn't mean it that way. She understands that he is busy with work and doesn't have time. But since Ars tried so hard, she would like to contribute too. Kakyuu blushed, looked away, and noted that he hadn't said that he didn't want a wedding. Elsa blushed very deeply. Ars prepared stone seats for guests, a wooden arch, and heart-shaped flower decorations. He praised the boy and Bors for their excellent work. Kakyuu warmed up and said that Dad would have to lend a helping hand. The guys started working on a place for the wedding ceremony. Elsa, Ars, and Bors watched what was happening with delight and interest. When everything was ready, Kakyuu asked Ars how he felt about it. He beamed and said it was amazing. Mom agreed with him. The girl asked if it was okay to use so much magic. He replied that there was no such thing as too much magic. Nothing would happen for one night, even if he used all his powers. He held out his hand for his bride and she took his hand. Then the guy remembered something. He snapped his fingers and Elsa rose into the air, and the next moment she found herself in a wedding dress. Kakyuu was also in a white tailcoat. He said that Ars beat him to it, but he had been secretly preparing since the day of the proposal. He hoped that he had managed to surprise her. Ars brought his mother a bridal bouquet. The girl started crying and said that he had succeeded, and she was very happy. The bride and groom walked down the aisle. Ars and Bors sat on chairs and watched. Standing near the heart, Kakyuu removed the veil from the bride's face. Then he raised his hand up. He used magic to release fireworks. Everyone watched with delight. The guy once again thanked Elsa for being there. She smiled, looked away, and then called the guy by name. Then the newlyweds kissed. Bors and Ars watched. A man was sitting in a tree far away. He was watching the fireworks. And then he said what he had finally found. In the midst of such a joyful event, a suspicious person appeared. About half a year has passed since Kakyuu and Elsa's wedding in the forest. They and Elsa head to Sabas to terminate their contract of service. It's where Sabas's trading company's headquarters are located, and for Elsa, it's a good old place. This is the kingdom of Lawrence, the land of magic. The young man was surprised by the scale. Sacred calendar 1015 October. It has been 2 years and 3 months since they began raising Ars. This city has flying carpets and magical street performances. He noted that it was just like in the fairy tale, 1001 Nights. Elsa turned to her husband. She said that she felt a little awkward. She asked him to be more calm. Elsa hides under another name, having been exiled from the royal family. A worthy spy, she even transformed skillfully. They noted that it was a beautiful city. Not like Barmora. It was the oldest existing kingdom with a history of 5,000 years. Enlightenment Square. The young man noted the size of the statue. On the right is the dragon god Ragazian, the progenitor of the dragon people and the first hero. On the left is the goddess of magic Ordamir, who, according to legend, was the first to bestow magic upon people. In Lawrence, the goddess of magic, the dragon god, and the goddess of creation are all equally revered, and the faith here is broad and tolerant. This is the complete opposite of the Caramel state, where the goddess of creation is considered the only and absolute truth, and strict dogmas are the basis of all teachings. The young man was surprised that his wife admired this harsh state. She replied that it had to be like that. This country, the cradle of countless heroes, is now honored with a pope, the only recipient of divine revelations in the world. Such a state simply must be strict. Every believer dreams of visiting there at least once. Kakyuu thought that, from the other side, everything looks exactly like this. Sebastian greeted Kakyuu and Elsa. He also complimented the girl's dress. She became embarrassed. The man said that he could not believe it. If it were not for their letter, he would not have recognized them. He asked them to follow him. Sebas asked where little Ars was. He replied that he would stay home today. It was better for him not to know that his parents were once servants. Elsa asked if Ars would be okay. He replied that he had set up a barrier so that no one could leave the area and had removed all dangerous objects. If they reached the city, they would be able to teleport instantly. The young man hopes that the contract can be terminated instantly. But Sebas said that this is a special contract, so it will take about 4 to 5 hours to terminate it. Dad is very worried about Ars, Kakyuu's teleportation point. Ars is 2 years and 4 months old. The boy tells him that he is fed up with this barrier. He can't get out. Because of it, he can't go for a walk. He thinks it's unfair that only boars can go through it. The dragon remembered Kakyuu's words that he was already big, that he couldn't fit in the house, so he would stay to guard. Ars suggested playing a staring contest and having a duel of glances. They began to have different faces. Ars exhaled and said that boars was not interesting at all. He decided to build a tower of blocks and lie on it. The stranger said that this is the Demon Master. This tree grows near powerful magical creatures, so it serves as an excellent landmark. The man looked at boars and said that he had already become so big, they hadn't seen each other for about a year. Ars sensed something was wrong and looked at boars. Those people started to attack him. The stranger said that he was a fire dragon, but he was still too young to be considered strong, so he couldn't do anything to him. Using the skill Mudstream to distract the dragon, and then ordered its limbs to be tied up. Boars attacked them with fire. The strangers were shocked that he could breathe fire. They didn't know that. They decided to get it and called Grims. Something was flying at the dragon. An unknown creature attacked the dragon. It was either a monkey or a man. Ars watched all this and was shocked. The man ordered boars to be held. Ars called him. The men turned their attention to the child. They had not been told that anyone would be here. Grims rushed to attack, but the barrier held him back. The man noted that such a spell would be impossible to break. The leader of this gang guessed that the owner of this villa deep in the forest must have some powerful mage that he keeps with him. Constantly maintaining a magical barrier and also keeping a fire dragon as a pet is too crazy a hobby. It would be fine if he only messed around with the lizard, but getting involved with the child is too much. They shouldn't be distracted from their goal. They decided to leave. Ars knocked on the barrier and called boars. He asked the barrier to let him out. He begged to be released. They are taking boars away. Boars may disappear. The boy refuses to accept this. His eyes are ablaze. Suddenly, the bandits heard some sound. They thought that it was their comrade's imagination running wild. Ars left the house, breaking the barrier. He stood up and said that he had to go, and he followed his friend. Ifuru, the ruins of an ancient city sunken in the forest. The people there do not live in the best conditions. They were watching a gorilla carrying a dragon, and someone told them not to watch, but to work. Vidra praised Victor for catching the dragon, and added that he would pay him and his men generously. He then announced what they were celebrating today. A little girl sits next to the wounded boars. One of the bandits said that they had not allocated much money for the dragon's treatment. The girl had tears in her eyes. The man looked away. He apologized, lowered his head, and left, his children walking next to him. Vidra turned to the girl. He told her that if she didn't have the gift of communicating with dragons, he would have already taken her life. If the dragon escapes, she will die. Boars apologized to the girl. She said that it was she who let him go back then. He licked her, and she said that it was not his fault. She thanked him. She is glad that he was given the name Boars, and that he found himself a good friend. She was surprised that her friend would come and save her too. She asked him not to talk nonsense. He doesn't even know where they are now, and even if he finds them, how will he win out of all of them? Boars is sure that Ars will come, and he will help the girl, just like he helped him on that rainy day. The girl noticed that he really is a good friend. That's why she doesn't want him to come. She doesn't want such a good man to be taken away from his life. Boris closed his eyes. The girl was crying next to him, and that beast man stood with the children next to the cage. Suddenly, all the people saw a child and asked where he was going. Suddenly, they were attacked by lightning. The residents realized that this was lightning magic and that they were being attacked by enemies. It was Ars. He took a deep breath and called out to Boars. It was so loud that everyone covered their ears. The dragon screamed in response. The boy was wants to find a friend. The girl was surprised that he actually came. Vidra noticed something that Victor had overlooked. It seemed like he had a tail following him. The man ordered his subordinates to grab the child, because they had to deal with him. The bandits surrounded the boy. He used the skill Explosion and shocked them. The robbers were roasted. Victor stood in bewilderment. Vidra laughed. The girl was in shock. Ars extended his hand and told Boars that it was time for them to return home. A large egg lay neatly in a wooden box. The girl wonders where this egg could have come from. To which the man replies that it doesn't matter where it came from, who it is, that it is a fertilized dragon egg, which is now in their possession. A man in glasses is beside himself with joy and anticipation, hugging a giant egg. Such a discovery is the highest degree of delight for a researcher. But when he comes to his senses, the man comes to his senses, becoming more serious. The man tells the girl that the dragon himself, reborn to the origins, turned to him and wished for her to become a kind of parent for the dragon's attributive power. After listening to him, Yura became agitated. She waved her hands and shook her head, making excuses. The girl did not believe how she could be a parent, but the man assured her that he would arrange everything, and she should not worry. The man called himself Set. He said that he was a specialist in magic and biology. He also said that he was hired as a slave by Vidra for his knowledge. Set explains that the ecology of attributes is shrouded in many mysteries, so the experiment with artificial breeding has not been conducted before. The man suggests that the temperature needs to be increased to awaken the dragon's inner fire. Suddenly, the egg begins to shake and crack. The man and the girl watch the birth of the little dragon. Yura watches this miracle of nature with delight. The girl lies under the blanket while Set strokes her head. She asks the man what they should feed the little dragon. Set wonders. The books only contain information about the nutrition of adults. Suddenly, the dragon roared, but the man did not understand it at all, and asked Yuri what he said. The disgruntled girl explains that the dragon called her stinky, to which Set bursts out laughing. He reminds Yuri that this is not surprising, since she hasn't washed for a week. Set writes down his thoughts and observations in a notebook. He realized that the legends were true, and those who managed to find their original essence are able to establish an inseparable connection with their unique powers. The man praises the girl, calling her amazing. He notes that Yura always notices things that others miss, and she has an ironclad memory. Set thanks the girl for everything she does. Set says that he would even like to make Yura his official assistant, but the current situation does not allow for this. The girl, excited by such a compliment, asks not to flatter him so much, since she is not confident in her abilities. Yuri doesn't quite understand what situation the teacher is talking about, but he remains silent and looks down with a slight smile. After a short silence, Set begins his story. He admits that he made a serious mistake earlier. Yuri fell silent and began to listen attentively to the teacher. The mistake was in his idea of the guild. The man thought that it was engaged in protecting refugees and the abyssal, providing them with work. However, the temptation to study attribute dragons was too strong. Contrary to the man's expectations, the guild turned out to be a group of bandits who seized power, kidnapped refugees, and forced craftsmen to make weapons and grow food. Set mentions that the girl's mother is being held captive by them. Yuri agrees and says that he knows this, although she is in another place. When the man and girl's homeland was attacked by demons, they fled, and Vidra protected them from the monsters. The mother told them to be grateful to him for saving them. Set is silent for a moment before continuing, his eyes cast downwards as he chooses his words and tells the girl that the reason for her rescue is, unfortunately, quite specific. The man goes on to explain that the true purpose of saving Yuri is her ability to form a subjugation pact with the fire dragon, and then use the dragon as a murder weapon. Set reveals Vidra's ultimate goal. He wants to conquer the entire country, and to do so, he is looking for a decisive force that will be able to stand up to the entire army of the state. Upon learning the truth, Yuri nervously shudders, shocked by this information. And finally, the man reveals the final truth, which is that Vidra chose him, the girl, and this little dragon for his plan. Sete sighs sadly, disappointed in himself, and Yuri begins to tremble, not wanting to believe it. Yuri asks if she can at least let this baby dragon go. The man freezes in surprise at her words, and then sighs. He is surprised that the girl is ready to sacrifice herself to save the dragon. Slowly, Set gets up from the floor, brushing the dust off his pants. He says that he agrees with the girl and the dragon should be released. The man continues that all this information was given to him by Vidra's younger brother, so he can be trusted and will be on their side. Set calms the girl who is crying. He promises her that everything will be fine and she should not worry. The girl stands in front of Vidra and looks ahead in horror and remembers Sete's last words. Before leaving, he asked her to wait for him and promised to return soon. The lion sits majestically on his throne, and behind him hangs the defeated Set, immobilized, with his eyes and mouth bandaged. Crows flutter around him, and all this creates a terrible picture for Yuri. Vidra begins his speech irritably. He says that the man does not have long left, and it is such a pity that they had to get rid of a good specialist, because he was filled with sympathy for the fire dragon and allowed him to escape. The man continues to say that he is sorry to lose a valuable person, but his crime and disobedience cannot go unpunished. Now he appoints his younger brother as his assistant. Yuri flinches at these words and turns her head to the man standing next to her. She remembers Set's words about how it was Vidra's younger brother who told him his plan and that he could be trusted. Vidra grabs the girl by the cheeks with one giant hand, pulling her towards him. In a threatening tone, he assures Yuri that it is imperative to find and return the fire dragon, and if the girl does not betray his trust, he will not hurt her. The threat in his voice becomes even more noticeable. The man runs his claw across the girl's face, leaving a cut. He reminds her that Yuri's behavior is the envy of her mother's condition. The girl is in a dangerous situation. She understands that if she does not become a weapon, she will lose all her dear people. The girl's thoughts are confused. She does not want to give up, but she has no other options. Yuri can no longer hold back her emotions, and bitter tears flow down her cheeks. Forced to agree, she painfully admits that she needs to give up everything. She needs to surrender. The dragon's roar is heard, in which the girl recognizes the words that someone will come and will definitely help. Suddenly, a boy appears, holds out his hand, and says that it is time for him and the dragon boars to return home. Vidra, noticing the boy, jumps up and reaches out to him. He is amazed that at such a young age, the child is able to control magic. The monstrous man is already thinking about how he can use him for his own purposes and make him his weapon. He orders his men to catch the boy alive. Everyone rushes to try to catch the youth, but he deftly escapes their hands, making quick and sharp jumps. The boy uses various types of magic on the attackers in an attempt to defend himself and get around them. He sent out electric discharges, fiery flames, and water balls, all of which spoke of his undeniably high skills in the use of magic. Vidra's minions cannot understand what kind of magic this boy uses. He uses fire and then water. One of them says that there is nothing special about the boy's magic except lightning. He coordinates the movements of the rest of the people and orders them to deploy protective magic and drive the boy into the corner of the room. The boy uses lightning again, simultaneously sending beams of his magic in all directions. People defend themselves with magic shields, reflecting the blow. The boy looks surprised that they are not afraid of him. The commander orders to drive him into a corner. The boy grabs one of the unconscious people and pulls him closer to himself. The boy lifts the man up and throws him towards the defending people. The body falls into a pile of people, and the boy himself lands on top, releasing a bright beam of light, blinding everyone. With quick movements, the boy goes around the people, running further and further. However, a large man with a crude weapon in his hands stands in front of him. A quick and sharp blow almost touched the boy. The iron ball is gigantic in size. It is larger than the boy himself. However, in this battle, it is not the strong who wins, but the agile one. Using his quick movements, the boy finds himself too close to the man. Gathering his strength, the boy kicks the enemy, defeating him with one kick. The man falls behind the boy with a loud sound, unable to move. The boy continues to jump away from the people who are trying to catch him. The confident young man is happy with how easily he manages to escape from the clutching hands. Minions Vidra. The child explains that he is able to be so agile because he plays heroes with boars every day. Yuri is surprised by his statements and looks at the dragon, waiting for confirmation from him. A confident boy prepares to deliver the killing blow. He calls for everyone to prepare and await his attack. Vidra's minions notice something approaching. The boy unleashes a powerful attack called Lightning Cannon. The magical wave quickly moves forward, leaving furrows in the ground. Those who were hit were thrown in different directions. The lightning flashed so strongly that it was visible beyond the castle. Vidra does not look scared, but rather interested. The man admits that they cannot cope with weak forces. The boy's attack left a mark on the floor and broke through several layers of the castle walls. The people lay exhausted nearby. Vidra orders his younger brother to prepare a special weapon, to which he winces. He doubts using something like that on a child, to which his elder brother angrily calls him a coward. Vidra orders another person to deal with this, and he is ready to carry out the order without hesitation. Vidra's orders slowly approaches the boy and asks his name. The enraged boy proudly calls himself Ars. The cunning man smiles conspiratorially and compliments the boy, saying that his name is good and brave. He introduces himself, calling himself Victor. Victor calmly says that he does not want to fight the boy and suggests that he surrender without a fight. However, the young man is categorically not going to give up. Suddenly, the boy realizes that he is trapped in the sand. He tries to get out, but only gets stuck deeper. Victor is somewhat surprised by how easy it was to catch this guy. The tendons of the boy's arms and legs are immobilized by the mud. Victor takes out his blade and moves towards the boy, and warns him that if he moves, it will hurt, so do not move. The dragon growls in anxiety, and Yuri freezes, not knowing how to help. They worry about the boy and watch what he will do next. The boy calls for lightning, preparing for the strike. He directs his powerful blow at Victor, in the hopes of stopping him, or at least delaying him for a while. The boy watches in horror as Victor easily defends himself from his attack with a strong shield. The man says that he had already foreseen everything. Victor raises his hand using an attack called Mud Flow. At the same moment, the boy begins to sink deeper and deeper. He suffocates and flounders in the mud flow, trying to find support. Yuri in horror, he covers his mouth with his hands, his eyes wide open in panic. The girl remembers the last moments spent with the teacher, remembers his dedication and courage. She hesitates for a while, gathering strength to resist. Yuri peeks out from behind the bars and shouts at the boy, urging him to use water. Vidra, hearing the girl prompting, looks very displeased, and the boy immediately decides to listen. With a powerful splash of water, the youth climbs out of the mud trap and bounces a safe distance away from Victor. The boy jubilantly thanks the girl for her help. An excited Yuri quickly nods in response. Victor and the boy run towards each other, both ready to fight. The man sharpens his blade, and the boy begins to release his magical powers. The man raises his hand to attack and delivers a blow that passes through the air. As the boy quickly reacted and dodged the blow, they are serious about winning and are ready to fight to the end. Victor grins, confident in his fighting skills. The boy's face twists from the small wound he received on his cheek. In mid-flight, the boy pushes off and lands on the floor. However, at that very moment, Victor uses his technique called Stone Column, and at that very moment, something bursts out of the ground right under the boy. From under the ground, one of them hits the boy directly. The blow makes him cough and fly into the air. Seeing this as a good moment to strike, Victor prepares to strike. The man summons stone projectiles and aims them at the boy in the air. The boy finds the strength to push off straight from the air and flies towards Victor. The boy picks up speed, and his rage grows with it. Despite his injuries, he is determined to defeat the man and help his friend escape. Like a projectile, the youth crashes into Victor's head, knocking him off his feet. The man's eyes darken, and he is unable to resist the strength leaving his body. Both fall to the ground, exhausted. However, Victor loses consciousness completely and has no strength left to rise. The boy lies just as tired, but still conscious. His zeal to win helps him stay afloat. The henchmen are stunned by the boy's strength. He walked through the barrage head first. Not everyone can do that. Yuri, inspired by watching their fight, she is also shocked by the boy's abilities. The beaten youth, despite his wounds, gets up, when suddenly a wide shadow hangs over him. An incredibly large gorilla-like monster brutally throws a small boy a great distance away. The blow was too strong. The boy flew without strength, his eyes darkened, and his body went limp. He hits the ground with painful slaps several times until his limp body comes to a stop. Vidra starts to get bored with all this. He mocks the girl for how she was filled with hope for salvation. Yuri herself fell into a stunned state. Not knowing what to do next, she was worried about the boy. Closest to VRDRA are amused by the situation that has developed. They have surrounded the leader, not forgetting to leave their comments. One of them is surprised by Victor's loss and is eager to fight. A saddened Yuri thinks that it would have been better if the boy had not come, because if this continues, the poor child might end up like her teacher. The monster holds the youth by the hood with only 2 fingers. Unable to withstand the onslaught of emotions, the girl begins to cry and lose hope. Sethi's words pop into her head, and she remembers him. The teacher tells the girl to be strong and to always, no matter what happens, continue to believe in her dream. In the memory, the man gently strokes Yuri's head in a fatherly way, giving his instructions. Yuri doesn't understand what a dream is, but Set immediately gives his explanation. It's who you want to become and what you want to achieve in the storm. And no matter how dark the present is, if you have a dream, you can believe in the future. Continuing his admonitions, the teacher says that if even the slightest chance appears to change a difficult situation, then it is necessary to take a step forward and seize this chance, but this courage is born from a sense of hope and aspirations for a dream. Memories follow one another. Yuri thinks that after the recent events, her faith in the teacher's words has wavered, and she should give up and abandon her dreams, abandon everything. But then Ars comes to mind, who suddenly appeared and was able to inspire hope. He fought with all his strength. His desire to help his friend and save him is stronger than his fears. However, he was defeated too. Yuri's thoughts are racing, she doesn't know what to believe and how to act, and the tears don't stop flowing down. The girl thinks that she is behaving like a selfish child. Because she should fight, she should show courage and go for her dream. The girl prays for the salvation of Ars. She asks the goddess, the dragon god, the god of magic, to help and save the child, who will definitely help many people in the future. He simply cannot die here and now. She calls on all the gods to give her the strength that can handle her. Yuri screams, trying to reach the boy and bring him to consciousness. The girl continues to scream, calling out to Aru. She believed in him, believed in his strength. He asks him to wake up and run as soon as possible. Vidra pays attention to her screams, not understanding what Yuri is trying to achieve. Suddenly Set, who everyone thought would never be able to utter a word, spoke up. With his last strength, he asserted that Vidra was destined to be defeated and disappear forever. The teacher continues his speech. He says that every powerful empire of the past began its path to fall. Without finishing, he falls silent for a moment. Set concludes his speech by saying that a fall begins with a single small spark of courage. Suddenly, Ars's eyes light up with a golden flame. Yuri's cries and the glory of his teacher helped him to come to his senses. The monster holding the boy did not have time to pay attention to Ars's movements. The youth slips out of his fingers in an instant and delivers a sharp, strong blow to the head. Ars's blow stunned his opponent. The boy lands on the ground next to the staggering monster. Vidra's confidants were surprised by the boy's resilience and strength. He managed to escape from the magical monkey's hands and even broke its fang. Yuri and the dragon immediately became inspired by Ars. The fire in the boy's eyes caught Vidra's attention. The man began to think and decided that there was no longer any need to capture this boy. The man orders Ars to be disposed of. The henchmen immediately surround the boy, their faces distorted into a bloodthirsty grimace. Ars is ready to do anything to save his friends. He declares that he will not leave until he saves them. The boy breathes heavily. He gathers his strength, expecting an attack. The boy says that he wants to be like the strong and kind hero from the picture book. The magic monkey doesn't even listen to him and is already swinging his arm to strike, but the boy is serious about fighting to the end. Ars releases his magic powers. He assures that he will never give up. His gaze is furious, and the boy is ready-body in a fighting stance. The boy is ready to start the battle. Suddenly, a voice is heard nearby, telling Ars that it was well said. Suddenly, two people burst in and deal a double blow to the magical monkey, so hard that it flies away, defeated in an instant. The masked man says that they were worried about Ars when they didn't find him at home. So when they get home, they'll give him a talking to. The man and woman blocking the boy paused for a moment, as if they wanted to say something. The man pats Ars on the head and praises his desire to save his friends. The boy smiles, happy with the man's words. Taking off their masks, Ars's parents say that they will now get down to business and that the boy can leave everything to them. Just a few hours ago, when the boy's parents returned, they noticed that the protective barrier had been destroyed. Elsa covered her face with her hands in surprise. She simply couldn't believe that there could be someone capable of destroying Kakyuu's magical barrier. Meanwhile, the guy himself was silently searching for something on the ground. He noted that someone had broken it from the inside, and inside there was only Ars, but the magical power that was used. She was too big, and so the guy found it hard to believe that Ars could have done this. He also noted that his magic was slightly neutralized. At that moment, Elsa called him, who wanted to show him the find. It was Borz's fang. In addition, there were also traces of another large magical creature in the area, and even signs of a battle with magic. The elf noted that Ars's tracks were visible, but Borz's tracks were nowhere to be found. The father then realized that the dragon had been kidnapped by someone, and his son had apparently chased after them. The girl noted that if this was true, then they should immediately give chase, which Kakyuu supported, suggesting that they go on a search. It was important to go as early as possible, because the tracks could soon disappear. Meanwhile, the man smugly told, pointing his finger at himself, that he was a descendant of the king of the beastmen, the Lion King himself, Vidra. And the elves he hated, who took everything from his people, called them savages, and drove them out, will definitely pay. He promised to take revenge and lead his people to true equality and freedom. He pointed to the dragon and said that this dragon essence was a weapon that he had grown from an egg to build a new era. And so he added that they would not be able to get it. However, the Artian parents only ordered the man to disappear in unison. He froze in silence, surprised by such impudence. Elsa said that this was the local leader and she would take him on herself, and Kakyuu could take on the rest. The guy worriedly asked if the girl could handle it, because he looked pretty strong. But Ars's mother explained that she was definitely not capable of fighting the crowd and protecting Ars, and therefore they simply had no other choice. When the boy wanted to object again, the girl stopped him. Her jaw clenched and the veins on her face stood out. The girl, gritting her teeth, repeated again that it would be better if she dealt with this man herself. This time, Kakyuu could not refuse her. The man himself only smiled. He asked if she really dared to interrupt him for the sake of her chatter, and then assured her that he would accept her challenge and fight. However, he shouted loudly that this would only happen after she could reach him. After this phrase, several of his warriors rushed to attack. However, full of determination, the girl ran past the henchman and jumped, striking straight at Vidra. But the man was ready for her blow, and then They simply exchanged spells. While the lion tried to defeat the elf with heavy blows, she tried, on the contrary, to hit the weak spot with dexterity and agility while jumping from side to side. Everything around began to collapse. There was an unbearable noise everywhere. Everyone around huddled, covering their heads from the falling stones in their ears. Vidra noted that it was rare to meet a dark elf, and such a skilled one at that. Could she really be from that family that hides in the shadows? The man seemed to be deliberately trying to anger her by saying that this family was despised even among elves, because they were considered traitors. Meanwhile, the girl took out some balls. They flew straight into the lion's face, and the girl herself only said that for a dirty beast he had too lively a tongue. These balls exploded with a roar in front of the beast man's mouth. She threw several knives at him and asked him to shut up because he was disgusting to her. Then the man caught the knives with his teeth, bit them, and pointed out that the elf should not insult him. He lunged forward, surrounding the girl with his huge claws, using the spell Fang of the Lion King. Elsa understood that the wide swing was a weak point. However, her attacks were too light and ineffective, but it seems she figured out what could be done about it. She jumped on the man's back and decided to block his view, so she used Twilight. Then he quickly used the magic recoil, and the spell was transferred directly to Elsa, which the man took advantage of by quickly delivering a powerful blow to her. The girl flew into a pile of stones with a deafening crash, and while Vidra was smugly watching the pile where the girl had fallen, he was surprised to see her getting up. The girl noted that luring the enemy into a trap and even reflecting his magic was commendable. He was really smart, like a real beast. Looking with a stern and cold gaze, the girl added that she, too, must make her dull mind work. The ground shook, and while Vidra was wondering what kind of creature was in front of him, he looked around and saw that they were not gaining the upper hand in the fight against Kakyuu either. The man stood surrounded by a barrier, and Ars sat calmly in his arms. Kakyuu, without even moving, demolished the enemies surrounding them. Defeated opponents lay on all sides, and those who had not yet entered the battle whispered about what they were doing. How strong is this hero? Kakyuu Gorodo ordered to tell his opponents about the composition of their organization, the number of people in their arrangement. The man was clearly dissatisfied with this behavior, and therefore called the sorcerer for help. The sorcerer clicked his tongue angrily and began to cast a spell with obvious reluctance. Behind him, a line of various scary magical creatures appeared. The guy made a hand gesture that ordered them to attack. Kakyuu looked at the monsters with disappointment, examining them with his eyes. He thought that summoning several creatures at once and controlling magical beasts was quite difficult. The man laughed evilly. He had already made a verdict that this was the end. After all, this was their main weapon, capable of putting to flight even the army of the Elven Kingdom, because in order to win, they need to bring at least a whole division. However, when the entire crowd caught up with the father with the child in his arms, he simply extended his hand forward and directed powerful streams of his forces, from which the monsters simply began to crumble, unable to even retreat. All the opponents froze in amazement, and meanwhile Kakyuu himself asked if they still wanted to stop and just give up, without causing any more trouble. His face looked truly terrifyingly crazy. All the warriors realized that he was just a court, and there was no point in even trying to defeat him. They rushed to flee in panic, calling on everyone else to do the same. When they turned around and called out to the magic caster, he had already disappeared. It seemed he had fled first without thinking about the others. Kakyuu exhaled and said that it was very bad to run away without even looking at the face of his opponent. The room was empty. A little later, all the opponents were tied up. Ars was shouting admiringly about how strong and cool his father was. Kakyuu himself was thinking that, unfortunately, they had missed one of the most problematic ones, but now something else was more important. He lifted his hat, listening to the sounds around him. It turned out that there were plenty of enemies outside. At worst, those trapped inside could be forcibly deprived of their memories, but if someone outside knew about the power, it would be bad. The warrior rushed to Kakyuu, begging him not to touch the children. He himself was ready to surrender, just so that the children would not be touched. But the guy said that he would not do anything with them, and asked to open the cage for him. The cage lock clicked. The dragon bowed his neck and growled questioningly. Kakyuu asked how he was doing and if he was hurt. The guy pointed his finger at boars, grinned evilly, and suggested that he make some noise outside. He wanted the others to sort things out themselves. However, his joy was interrupted by the girl who was sitting in the cage with the dragon. She asked him to wait. Yura blocked the dragon with her body and introduced herself. She said that she had the gift of talking to the dragon, and that was why she was entrusted to take care of boars, who humbly bowed his head behind her back. Ars pointed his finger at the girl and said that when he was in danger, she saved him. Hearing such news, the boy's father was surprised and shook Yura's hand with a smile. He thanked the girl and said that he would definitely thank her for her help. The girl, having refused help, said that there were many servants and artisans here who were forced to work, and therefore she admitted that, in her opinion, boars should not be sent alone to destroy everything. And then she looked down at the floor. She thought about how she didn't want to shift responsibility to others anymore. The girl didn't have time to finish her wish when the man tenderly demanded her on the head. He stroked the girl's hair and said that he would entrust this difficult matter to her, which meant that she should go with boars and guide him. Yura beamed happily and agreed to do it. Ars, watching this, smiled happily. Meanwhile, the elf continued to fight with the huge lion. They exchanged powerful spells using not only physical strength, but also magic. One of these spells from the elf was Night Darkness. Then, the formidable man responded with Reflection of Magic. They clashed in a furious stream of powerful energy. After each attack, they scattered in different directions, and then collided again in a series of powerful blows. The man broke the floor right under the girl's feet and smugly waited for her defeat. She really did lose her footing, and then the man tore off a piece of the floor and threw it right at her, but the girl managed to grab onto it with her hands. Vidra exhaled heavily, catching his breath from the heavy blow. He hopefully asked himself if he hadn't accidentally ended this fight already. Then, in search of an enemy, he jumped onto the remains of the floor below. Sitting down on the stone, the man felt that his opponent was still alive, and somewhere here. Meanwhile, the elf herself was hiding in the shadows. Lev understood that she was perfectly camouflaged in the dark, which meant he wouldn't be able to aim. While saying such thoughts out loud, he looked around and peered into the darkness to find her. However, he decided to do it easier and use one of his strongest spells. He intended to blow away the girl along with everything around her. Her face twisted in terrible delight and joy. From everything that was happening, he was sure of his victory. The earth shook, and everything around was shattered by his total storm whirlwind. You could see huge streams of wind flying around, and they were the ones that were breaking everything. Almost everything went up in the air, and from the outside it was possible to think that a real tornado was raging here. Vidra laughed joyfully. He was pleased with the work done. He stood in the middle of an empty area. It seemed he had swept away everything, leveling the place to the ground. Mizuchina looked around smugly. However, he rejoiced too early, because behind him there was already an elf using a silent strike right to the neck. Leo didn't notice it until the needle was in his neck. He looked away and saw something in his neck. The man angrily snatched the weapon away and threw it on the floor, asking what it was and how she could do something like that. It was then that he noticed that she had used invisibility, and without even casting a spell. He realized that just as he was about to cast the spell, she had silently and swiftly approached him. She crept up invisibly and hid in ambush behind his back, under his feet, just where the blow could not reach, until he launched a blow over a wide area, waiting until he was completely confident of his victory. He realized that all this persistent recitation of useless spells from the elf and feigned rage in the darkness, they were just a distraction, meant to show that she had no decisive attack. It was to drive the man into a dead end where there would be no escape, so that he would release the spell himself over a large area. And then, believing in victory, he relaxed, and then she calmly delivered the final blow. This seemed to the man to be a simple lie. However, there was not much time to reason. The invisibility fell from the girl, and Vidra himself fell to his knees with a crash. He twisted and screamed from unbearable pain, and then the girl confessed that she had poisoned his balance system, paralyzing his vestibular apparatus. She also added that she had sharpened 5 senses at the same time, and now any light, sound, and even smell would become a terrible weapon for him. A little more would pass, and the boundary between sleep and reality would collapse, but he had nothing to worry about, because he would remain alive. The girl admitted that her master did not like unnecessary cruelty, but there was something else. She remembered a recent conversation. The man asked her if she remembered the children they had taken under protection in Bayamore about 2 years ago, and the girl had agreed. Then the man said that the results of the investigation had arrived, the name of the organization that had sold them. The Lion King's rebirth. They took over Bamora through the Fire Dragon scandal, selling dragon material weapons and trading. And the head of this organization is listed as a merchant, but only on paper. The real owner and leader of the dark side is Vidra. The elf lifted the man by his hair and admitted that she still had too many questions for him. He, covered in sweat and tears, only begged not to touch him and to stop. Meanwhile, Yura was flying around on a dragon. The warriors scattered in different directions, realizing that they could not cope with the dragon of the elements, but someone decided to prevent their escape. These were the servants they kept for work. The warriors shouted menacingly at them to go away and not to stand in their way, because if they even tried to resist, their leader would quickly find a way to pacify the rebels forever. However, loud speeches did not help, and one of the men asked them to look around and noted that they were no longer servants. On one of the walls lay the defeated Vidra under the foot of an elf. On the other stood Ars with his father, and on the pikes made of the floor were the heads of the defeated monsters. And in the air flew a formidable dragon of the elements. Without thinking for long, the warriors threw down their cold weapons and, raising their hands, admitted that they were surrendering. Koki and Arsa's mother discussed the number of people. It turned out that there were 180 fighters, and about 300 servants and their families, which was already quite a lot. However, Koki assumed that they had other branches and bases nearby, so in total there should be 2,000 people. The elf spread her hands and asked to imagine, 2 people captured the stronghold of such a large organization. If this became known, it would be very bad. The guy scratched the back of his head, realizing that his wife was right. He said that they simply couldn't help but inform the authorities, since there were so many wanted criminals among them. But when Elsa suggested getting rid of them all, her husband only timidly asked, but fortunately it turned out to be just a joke. There was silence, and it seemed the conversation had reached a dead end. But suddenly someone caught their attention. One of the tied-up guys shouted that they should calm down, because they were tied hand and foot. Then one of the former servants threatened him and told him to shut up, reminding him that they had not yet forgotten how children were treated here. And since such a punishment awaited them anyway, then what difference did it make who carried it out? All the warriors tensed up at such words. The one who had previously expressed his thoughts without hesitation was now trembling with fear and begging for mercy, because they too had their own families. But the man with the weapon was unyielding and continued to scream, filled with rage. Ars suddenly appeared between the arguing men and used lightning, which made one of them close his eyes and move away, and the other drop his weapon. The boy smiled and said that since the fight was over, they all needed to make peace. Both men stared silently at the wonderful child, who looked at them with eyes full of determination. Elsa noted that her son shouldn't do that, because these guys are bad, but Kakyuu burst out laughing. The guy seemed to realize something, and then began to laugh quietly, covering his mouth with his hand. The elf froze in shock, watching the gentleman. The laughter turned into madness, and a grin appeared on his face. Kakyuu assured his wife that he had just had a great idea. Elsa froze. She noticed that his face really did look scary now. Bulky forest. They were looking at a huge building near the cliff, and then Kakyuu asked if this was by any chance a base. The man explained that this was a communications center set up in the ruins of an old fortress. This is where they monitor external threats and hold hostages. The warrior also added that in order to prevent the workers from escaping, they were capturing their relatives. Kakyuu himself continued to look into the distance through his binoculars. Pushing him away from himself, he smiled and said that they would finish this task very quickly. A little later, something interesting happened in the trading city of Pamora, namely in the guild hall, the rebirth of the Lion King. Activity was concentrated in this place. Pamor's Bifishi. However, those who came here were still interested in the unofficial side, namely the headquarters of the intelligence department. The assistant explained that they collect information about kings and aristocrats there, and also conduct illegal financial transactions, and that this place is located in the dungeon. The girl nodded as a sign that she understood and smiled. She made a slight gesture with her hand and said that this was her part of the job. Several people entered the room and one of them raised his hand and asked for attention. Kakyuu smiled broadly, showing everyone the photograph. He explained that the leader of these people is now in the hands of these people, and assured that as a result, the guild is disbanded. At the same time, Ars's mother reported the same thing, and added that they were all now becoming part of their organization. The man who was in charge at this place jumped up on the spot. The couple spoke to Zarya in a prepared speech. The work of these people should remain the same, and therefore they have no reason to worry, but from now on they will obey other people and follow only their orders. Like such statements at all, and therefore both immediately rushed into battle, thinking that they would win without encountering resistance. However, both the boy and the girl had something to add about those who decide to resist the new order. However, both were quickly defeated, because those who decide to resist will simply be eliminated, and therefore everyone should be more prudent. A few days ago, Kakyuu was discussing his plan with a girl, and she asked in surprise if he really decided to buy a title using a dark guild. The boy smiled and agreed. He offered to bring Vidra and the others as an offering, and in exchange they would demand that the king grant them a title. The dark elf put her hand to her forehead, trying to understand such a strange plan. She clarified that this all contradicted Kakyuu's words, because he literally just said that nothing would work out for them like this. He explained that they didn't need to hide the fact that the guild had been liquidated, only that it had been done by the two of them. Then he thoughtfully asked if his interlocutor remembered what they had talked about earlier. The girl said that first they had to spread a rumor that the gentleman had a personal army, then actually create it and recruit fighters with the money received, then gain recognition through trade privileges, and after that receive the title. When Kakyuu confirmed that this was indeed the case, he encountered objections. Since they did not yet have an army, it would take a long time to create an army, and it would be almost impossible to do it in 5 years. The guy pointed his hand at the people behind him and noted that they already had an army. The interlocutor thoughtfully summed up. It turned out that Kakyuu proposes to use the fighters of the Dark Guild, take all those whom they defeated, and put them up as mercenaries. The guy laughed approvingly in response. He said that not all of them became criminals by their own free will, so if they were given the role of heroes who crushed the villains, many would agree and play it with joy. 2,000 fighters, a financial base, information, and new territories. Even a criminal organization wouldn't refuse all that wealth. And if you add to this the captured S-rank criminals and the merit of freeing the servants, and then get a strong army, economic power, and real lands, then the entire balance of power will definitely change. The girl realized that the king would rather give a title than make such a person his enemy. Kakyuu noted that this was a correct assumption. However, helping not only refugees but also criminals seemed to the girl to be a very kind act on Kakyuu's part. The guy himself simply said that there was nothing special about it and he was just using what he could use. And then, smiling slightly, he decided to say something else. They looked at the wounded, and Kakyuu finally finished what he wanted. He said that instead of reducing the number of enemies, it would be much easier to increase the number of allies. Then he turned to one of the medics and asked how the treatment was going. The worker turned around and greeted him and said that everything was going quite well. He said that he thought about the possibility of difficulties arising, given that there were few magic healers among them, but he did not finish the sentence and pointed towards Ars, who was sitting among the sick. The boy used his magic to heal the warrior. The man was genuinely surprised by such a sight, and therefore asked who this child was, because his healing skill leaves much to be desired, but he forcibly makes all wounds heal. The mother of this child looked worried, but the father was completely calm. He knew that there was no point in worrying, and their son had plenty of magical power, so he would not deplete it. The stern warrior in bandages turned to Ars and said that he had nothing to complain about. But was this child confident in his actions? The boy, without looking up from his treatment, asked what was the matter. Another man intervened in the conversation and awkwardly asked if this guy had really forgotten what they had managed to do to him. Ars understood his sparkling eyes and said that Boars had returned to him, and those uncles he had wounded were now here too. So if they wanted to make peace, then first they had to take away all the pain and heal them. Everyone burst into loud laughter. They did not understand at all how this child was able to disarm them. Ars watched silently, not understanding why everyone was laughing. When they finished running away, one of the men asked if Ars needed anything from him, and then the boy said that he wanted to touch his horns. The man gave his permission, and Ars was already reaching for his head, but he was distracted by a name being called. Behind the boy's back was his mother. who lifted him off the ground and said that it was time for Arsu to stop and rest for a little while. The boy had already begun to object. The man whose horns Ars wanted to touch said that the boy would definitely be able to do it next time, whenever he wanted, and the girl sitting next to him also joined in. She said that her tail could also be touched. When the girl was carrying Ars, something suddenly caught his attention and, looking closely at what was there, he called his mother, who turned around to find out the reason. The boy asked why everyone had such a different appearance. The girl, without thinking twice, said that the reason was race, because they were all different races. Ars turned to his mother and asked why, if the race was different, then everyone was so different. The girl awkwardly looked away, trying to find the words for such a complex explanation. She said that this world was created by the goddess of creation, and they are her priceless treasures. And treasures come in different shapes and colors, and the greater their variety, the more beautiful they are, and therefore, probably, it was intended that way. Ars looked at his mother, looked away, and then looked puzzled. He looked into the girl's eyes. With his whole gaze, he asked what she was talking about. She sat her son down on the ground and told him that there were many answers to such questions, but one day the boy would certainly find his own. She pointed to the side and explained that she had brought Ars to the orphanage, and then added that she thought making friends was also a very important lesson. Arch agreed with his mother and confidently ran towards the playing children. The boy's father, who was nearby, noted that the boy had become much more confident in expressing his thoughts. The girl noted that time was flying too fast, and then asked how the gentleman would answer such a question, which confused him. He thought for a moment and admitted that he would have said that all of this was the result of natural selection. The elf girl exhaled heavily, showing that she did not like this answer at all. It seemed uninteresting to her. Ars ran up to the children, which clearly frightened them, and interrupted their games. The boys quickly realized that it was Mr. Kakyu's son who had defeated one of the leaders. The boys noted that it was very cool, scary, and Ars meanwhile silently watched, perplexed. All the children quickly ran in different directions. Some shouted that they needed to go help their parents, and others that something hurt. And so Ars was left completely alone in the deserted clearing, but suddenly he heard screams that immediately attracted his attention. He crept closer and hid behind the bushes. He saw Yura, who was protecting someone from 3 boys. She spread her arms, covering the little children with her body, and said again that these children were not guilty of anything. Her eyes were full of sadness and despair, while the children behind her did not seem to quite understand what was happening. The guy started shouting. He was talking about how these were Vidra's children, namely because of his pedigree they were in his arms, and therefore the question immediately arose whether she was in league with them. Yura replied that it was not so, but it seemed that no one wanted to listen to her. The guy threatened that she needed to get out of the way, because she did not even know what they had been through. The boy swung the rock in his hands, loudly declaring that these children were just monsters. The girl cowered and prepared to take the blow, but unexpectedly, Ars appeared in front of her and took the blow of the stone on himself. The offender froze in horror, realizing what had happened, and Ars began to talk about how he shouldn't offend his friends. He flashed like lightning and said that he would not forgive anyone for this. Those who had recently been torturing the children screamed in horror. They apologized and asked to wait, but Yura grabbed the boy shining with lightning and asked him not to do this. Even Ars himself was surprised, because he did not expect at all that his friend could do this. The offenders rushed to run away, and the guy looked pitifully at his girlfriend, who took the blow of his lightning. The girl was burned and suffered, but the only thing she asked the boy was to forgive those children, because there is no one here who has someone dear to him. Ars turned to the girl in fear, turning around, and then he noticed that her hand was weakening and her head was bowing to the ground. Yura fell to the ground, and no matter how Ars called her, the girl still did not answer him. Some time passed, but it was still light outside. Yura woke up to Bors, gently licking her cheek. The girl opened her eyes with difficulty and winced, either from the bright sunlight or from the remnants of pain. She jumped up and asked the dragon not to do that again, because she was all covered in his drool. Joyful cries were heard from the side. Someone was very happy that Yura had finally woken up. It was Ars, who was playing with the rescued children. The boy apologized for hurting the girl with his lightning, and asked if she was feeling okay after his healing magic. The girl asked if Ars had really played with these children, to which the boy replied that, in his opinion, Ima and Maha are wonderful, and so they are now friends. Maha hugged his son Kakyuu and admitted that he considers him very good. Yura was very surprised at first, but then she exhaled happily and laughed awkwardly. She continued to laugh, her cheeks slightly flushed. She was very happy that Ars had managed to make friends with these children. When she wanted to throw off the cloth, she quickly noticed that she was completely naked and even screamed in surprise. And then she still asked where all her clothes were. The boy apologized again and said that they were ruined by the zippers. Yura fell into despair, her face full of shock and sadness. The girl asked if she understood correctly, that Ars saw her back. The boy happily agreed, and his eyes sparkled, folded his hands in front of his face, and exclaimed that her back looked absolutely incredible. He remembered that amazing sight and was absolutely delighted. The girl froze in bewilderment. She didn't understand how anyone could consider her wings cool. She awkwardly mumbled that there was nothing cool about her back, but Ars didn't agree with that at all. The guy said that he admired it and decided to ask if Yura could fly, but her wings were too small for that. But the boy didn't even think of calming down. He asked if Yura would be able to fly when her wings became bigger. But the girl hesitated, not knowing what to answer. Then the child's eyes lit up even more, and he asked if he would grow wings like these. But the girl explained that people don't grow wings like these, and so he won't have them. Ars remembered that Yura could talk to boars, and he could talk to him too. The boy concluded that based on this, he was also a dragon god. The girl, not expecting such a stream of questions, asked the interlocutor to stop. She asked if he really wasn't scared at all when he saw them, but her friend didn't understand why he should be scared. The girl said that people are always scared by something unknown, but Ars didn't agree at all. He said that for him, understanding something you don't know is very funny. The girl froze in amazement. She thought for a moment and said that the boy was very amazing. Despite being so small, he already thought like an adult, just like her teacher. Yura remembered how she once confessed to her teacher that she wished she had been born a completely normal person. Her teacher asked why, since he would have been happy if he had been in her place, but she noted that it was all because of her teacher's specialness. People say that she is a child of the ancestors and blessed by the dragon god, but when they see her wings and scales, they all immediately start whispering behind her back in fear and disgust. The girl even admitted that she was called a half-breed and a monster. People are afraid of everything they don't know, be it magical beasts, demons, or even just other people. The teacher said that if you figure it out, then there will be no fear left, which means you can find a way to coexist. The man admitted that this is the reason why he became a biologist, in order to prevent conflicts through knowledge. Yura muttered that it would be much better if the Razichi did not exist at all. Such childish hope and naivete made the girl's teacher laugh. He turned to the girl and said that in that case, no one would strive to know the other, because it is precisely because of differences that the desire to understand the other arises. The man initially said that he chose this job to avoid conflicts, but in fact, at first everything was much simpler. After all, he was simply interested in studying these differences. If everyone thought the same way as he did, then perhaps this girl's worries would disappear forever. Ars listened to this story in silence, and then ran even closer to Yura and shouted that he had found the answer to his mother's riddle. The girl, not expecting such activity from the child, involuntarily screamed and blushed slightly. The boy placed his hands on the girl's knees and, with eyes full of enthusiasm, explained that differences between races are necessary so that conversations are interesting, and differences exist so that everyone can recognize each other. Yura looked at the child with confusion, and he, in turn, noted that this was the reason why the girl had so many differences. In order for as many people as possible to recognize her, and they could become friends, Yura continued to be surprised by the smart boy's words. The girl realized that Ars was just a ray of light in this terrible darkness, but not daring to say it out loud, she simply agreed with him, saying that all this would be simple. The guys were going somewhere while everything was still. It got dark, and the weather continued to be excellent. Yura once again sincerely thanked Ars. She honestly admitted that she would really like to become a scientist, but the boy only asked in surprise who she was. The girl smiled and said that it is the one who studies what no one knows and shares this knowledge with the world. When she asked him what Ars himself wanted to become, he shouted without thinking that he would be a hero. Clenching his fists, he promised that he would be as strong a hero as his mom and dad, and then he decided that he would be even stronger than them. The boy stopped and the girl put her hands on Ars's shoulders. Yura supported the boy and said that she believed in his dream. She knew that he would definitely become a hero who is not only strong, but also able to save people's hearts. While they were stopped, the children who were with them suddenly noticed something. It turned out to be their uncle, whom they immediately began to call. Ima and Maha happily rushed to their uncle. He turned out to be a knight standing near the cart. But it seemed that someone was looking out from around the corner of the cart, closely examining the group of children. A girl who looked very much like Yuru called her by name. The girl quickly recognized her as her mother. She called out loudly and rushed straight towards her. She jumped into the arms of her mother, whom she had not seen for a very long time. The girl and her daughter cried, holding each other tightly in their arms. Ars and the knight watched this spectacle with joy. They were very happy about this reunion. And on the other side of the cart, it seemed like someone else was watching everything that was happening. These were Arsa's parents. His mother noted that Koki was really very kind. The guy looked at his interlocutor and, smiling, looked away and assured her that this was not at all the case. He is simply repaying a debt that he was unable to repay in the past. The girl exhaled heavily at Koki's stubbornness and assured him that this was what it meant to be kind. A little later, when December 1015 came, in the Elvratian Federal Royal State, namely in the holy city of Astanarf, in the ancient tree of the Holy Dragon, at the very top, in the castle of Astokino, someone was addressing the ruler. It was a servant who told that a man calling himself the merchant Kakyuu had appeared in the barracks of the Knights of the Magical Order, and that he was seeking an audience with the ruler. The man sitting in the center of the room remembered that this was probably the man from the letter, the contents of which seemed very suspicious. The servant reported that, judging by everything, this was indeed the case. The man on the street bowed and said that he had captured S-rank criminals, including Vidra and the other 12, as well as 35 members of the leadership of the Dark Guild, the Lion King's Radiance, and was asking for a reward. He formally requests what appears to be a reward, the title of aristocrat and the estates. After hearing all this, the ruler became interested. An ordinary merchant dealt with a gang of S-rank, and even dared to come with a request for a title. It seemed very funny to her. This guy to her, and the servant left the hall following the merchant. Meanwhile, on the street, the man asked not to let down his guard and use the magic shackles, but the main thing is to act extremely carefully. Vidra growled angrily to be let go, as he was not going to run away. However, he noticed one knight who caught his attention. It turned out to be his relative, and so the irritated lion only snorted angrily in his direction. The warrior in armor himself looked away shyly and awkwardly. Meanwhile, the faces were whispering while looking at Kakyuu. This was the same merchant about whom various rumors were circulating among the traders. They say even bards have composed songs about him. He easily defeats monsters that hunters and adventurers cannot handle, ensuring safety on the roads. But no one has ever seen his face, and he even has his own mercenaries. While everyone was surprised that Kakyuu really existed, the guy himself was enjoying such conversations by eavesdropping. Thanks to the fact that he diligently carried out orders, the rumors about him became more convincing. He decided to thank those who helped him. The servant returned and called the boy. He waved his hand and said that the king had deigned to receive him, and therefore the merchant should follow him. When Kakyuu entered the hall, the girl who was sitting in front of him reading a book introduced herself as Yrga Yormus Noit, the second king of the federated kingdom of Elvrant. She immediately noted that this time the guy in front of her had acted nobly. Sitting on one knee, Kakyuu noted that everything was not so, and the king's words were too flattering for him. The girl replied that everything was fine and that he shouldn't worry, because she was just a symbol that united the Federation, a king just for show. The real power was in the hands of the local aristocrats. Kakyuu grimaced in displeasure and thought that this was nonsense. He had asked for an audience, not a personal meeting with the king. Didn't such things go through generals or ministers? But there was no reason to worry. Rather, the advantage was on his side. He replied that he was grateful for the opportunity to be received by His Majesty today, and he thought to himself, if direct communication with the king will allow him to quickly obtain a title and lands, then this is good, because he has already studied the old landowners and the laws. The girl said that she had heard of the boy's request and would recognize his merits, as well as the merits of his army, and therefore would reward him with a title and lands. Kakyuu's face turned to stone in shock. He raised his head and asked again. Then the queen leaned her chin and asked if the guy was really so greedy, and this was not enough for him. Kakyuu nervously waved his hands and said that this would be more than enough for him. He thought that there should have been much more testing and negotiations, and that was why he reacted like that. The king said that the award ceremony would take place in a month, she would send a letter, and he could do with the refugees as he saw fit. The lands would be managed through an appointed manager, so it was worth listening to him. Kakyuu exhaled heavily and agreed with Cool, who, having finished, announced that the guy was free and could go. A little later, already on the road, the question of the manager arose. Later, at the Chamber of Commerce in the port city of Pemor, the assistant expressed admiration for the gentleman. The girl happily assured that Kakyuu would indeed soon become an aristocrat, and all this was only thanks to their help, and therefore he should be grateful. However, Shiren quickly corrected the girl and asked her not to be rude. But she still did not calm down and asked if the gentleman could somehow pamper them, perhaps reduce their taxes. The guy himself hesitated from such persistent requests. However, someone came to them and stated that Kakyuu did not have such authority. He was the executive governor of the vast territory of Porkly, Marisa Parsifal. She noted that on such matters it was worth turning to her as the governor. Stepping aside, Kakyuu and his viceroy discussed something, and their conversation turned to the plan to reconstruct the old Porkly tract. Marisa praised the gentleman for this idea, but noted that they would have to cut the budget. The assistants watched them silently. They whispered that Kakyuu was now an honorary aristocrat. There are two types of aristocrats in this country. The first is with lands, he manages his land himself, and the second is without lands, he cannot decide all the issues related to the land himself.